our newer council, not necessarily a new council anymore, but our newer council. And so it's really great to be in person and see faces. And thank you for keeping safe. Thank you for masking up and for keeping your distance. With that, we are going to go ahead and start the meeting. I'm going to ask Madam City Clerk to conduct roll call, please. Present.
Mayor Conceptual Goss.
Here.
Councilmember Edwin Garcia.
Present.
Councilmember Melvin. Here. Councilmember Robert Parker.
Present.
Thank you. And we are very lucky today to have some visitors. We have our Boy Scout Troop 110 from St. Rita, and they will be presenting our colors and also leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Calling our attention, have all audience stand up, please. Calling our forward march. Calling guard halt. Calling guard about face. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Color guard about face. Color guard post the colors. Color guard about face. Color guard regroup. Color guard forward march. Color guard dismissed. You guys may be seated.
Thank you so much, Troop 110, for coming out to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to present the colors. Go ahead and move on with the agenda. We need an approval of the meeting agenda. Before we do that, I just wanted to make a switch of our presentations to have Chief Bartlett present second for the Conservation Corps project, and we'll review for the last two. That are the only changes to the agenda. Thank you. Red Cross will not be able to attend. I will still go ahead and present, though. Thank you. With that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda with changes? Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. We'll go ahead and go on to the next item. Approval of the reading resolutions and ordinances. You're going to have this on every agenda. So if I can have a motion to approve that.
Madam Mayor, where do you skip the inspiration?
We got so inspired by Boy Scouts Troop 110. Let's go ahead and let me get. Seeing none opposed, motion carries unanimously. Councilmember Parkhurst, inspiration, please.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to start with thanking Troop 110 for the flag ceremony. In particular, I noticed that they had kind of the full swath of the scouting spectrum there. I think we had some that were just scouts, and we had a number of life scouts out there. So thank you so much for your guys' dedication to the community. We have got one of the highest per capita enrollments in scouting of any city in our district. So that's a great thing. But my inspiration today is about International Women's Day. So yesterday was International Women's Day, a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. And so with that in mind, I reached out to the library and to a couple of people in town to do a little bit of research on the women of Sierra Madre. So I'd like to thank Debbie Henderson at the library and Susan Henderson for their help with this. Many of you may know that one of the founding women of Sierra Madre was Frances H. Hobbs. She was a nature lover, and in 1886 started a small nursery at the corner of Baldwin and Grandview. She also ran a real estate office in the city and donated the land on which the church now stands. Also of note, just on March 1st, beginning of Women's Month, this book was published, Unsung Heroes, the Modern Priscilla's 200 Extraordinary Women in copies to the library, and it's also available in Kindle edition on Amazon for $9.99. And I'd like to read just a short quote at the beginning of this, and this comes from Mrs. J.H. Wright from the Annals of Early Sierra Madre. The spirit of Sierra Madre is simple living and striving, permeated throughout with an inspiring, if unspoken, conception of true citizenship, social service, duty, responsibility, and old-fashioned courtesy. This little town has an enviable reputation in the larger world beyond our bounds for the things it does and the way it does them. And this was written in, I want to say, the 1860s, but I think it rings true today. So thank you for that. And thank you to Joan for the writing this book.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. So the next item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from February 23rd. Do we have any changes, comments, edits?
Yeah, Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Creeds?
in the section regarding the arena element, 6th paragraph, Madam City Clerk. The last sentence, I think, should read, Councilmember Creeves asked if there had been any consideration given to including the lots adjacent to post office site in option B as in boy.
Okay, thank you for that, Councilmember Creeds. Are there any other changes, edits, corrections?
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes, so on page 6, 4th paragraph, first sentence reads, Councilmember Garcia inquired of the likelihood of a Measure V vote in the next election. The spirit of the question was, if we end up recommending option B, what is the likelihood within the next cycle there would probably be a measure V? That was the spirit of the question.
Okay, I think we can capture that. Any other corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the corrections?
Move to approve the minutes as corrected.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, seeing none opposed and seeing none abstain, the motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is City Council reports. Anyone have a report?
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Creeds?
I attended the senior commission last week and got a great update on all of the things that they're doing and, trying to provide programming to our seniors despite being limited in their in-person options. Also continuing to do their meal distribution, which has really been amazing and fed a lot of people during such a hard year. One thing, and maybe we'll bring this up later again for a future agenda, the City Commission would like to come and present to the council, preferably if it's going to be outdoors in at a warmer time. So just maybe note that for a future meeting.
Thank you. Anyone else have a report?
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Parkhurst?
So I attended the Planning Commission meeting on March 4th. And they had 2 public hearing items there. And I wanted to comment, one of them required significant thought and dialogue by the commission. And I want to thank the commission for their hard work on it. It wasn't an easy matter that they had before them. And I think that they really, earned their positions that night of going through it. The second was I was at the Clean Power Alliance board meeting, also on the 4th. And the staff there is doing an incredible job looking out for our residents and making sure everything from making sure people with solar panels get paid for the energy they produce to supporting residents during COVID that can't pay their dues, or pay their bills, excuse me. There's also going to be some upcoming legislation that they're helping to push forward that will lower our costs and provide us with additional valuable resources. And I think anyone that's been to a city council meeting knows what's coming next. So there's now more people vaccinated in the US than have officially contracted the virus. We can see a future of more in-person gatherings such as this and hopefully opening of businesses, but not yet. We still have a state of emergency in the city. And as a council member, I'm not ready to lift it. And even when we do, I'd like to recommend that we still wear masks and socially distance when people are inside. Please wear a mask, wear two if you're at all concerned. We're almost there, hang in there. We're getting to the end of this.
Thank you for the report. Do we have someone else who'd like to report out?
Just a couple of things, Madam Mayor. This past weekend, we had Sierra Madre Little League's opening day. It was a great event. Everybody, all the children and coaches and everybody were wearing the masks. They had a parade, a little bit different than they typically do. Each family had their own car instead of each team being in their own. And it really was a good event. The local news actually was there, and they filmed and they reported on the happenings. It's great to see the kids out there after nearly a year of lockdown, quarantine, to be with each other. Everything was safe and it went well. Also, Pasadena Unified School District is beginning to repopulate the schools. There still is an option to be part of distance learning, but within a couple weeks, we're going to have K through second grade, or actually pre-K through second grade back in Sierra Madre Elementary, and I believe the day after spring break, which is 3 or 4 weeks from now, third grade through fifth grade will be attending, with plans for the middle school potentially happening.
Great, thank you. Tim?
Yeah. I attended the last library board of trustees meeting, and they are, as many of you are aware, working on a plan to repair, renovate, and expand our library. At this point, they are kicking around ideas. They divided up into 2 committees. I'm going to, I think, be involved in one as liaison. So when I know more about those in the next meeting, I'll share that information with you. I just wanted to say, I'm a political science professor. I've been doing that for 30 years. And I've been teaching kids, undergraduates, that democracy is about people getting involved in their government. And I look around here today and I'm just really charged. I love it. I congratulate you for taking an interest in your community. And I think this is the way government is supposed to work. So good to see you all today.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I don't have a report. However, I wanted to just recognize the International Women's Day yesterday, but also Women's History Month this month. And it was great timing that Joan Frederick released her book during this time. And I had asked her when I picked up my copy if it was intended. She just said, no, I've been tired of putting these stories together. I needed to get it out. So if anyone has an opportunity to take a look at that, please do. And I do want to recognize, this is the way that it is subtitled is The Modern Priscilla's 200 Extraordinary Women in Sierra Madre, California. And I did recognize someone there, and I wanted to recognize her now, Miss Pat Alcorn, who is right there in front of me. I was really flipping through and I said, I know her. So she is one of our 200 modern day Priscillas, and thank you for all your contributions to our city, Pat, and to all of those. Okay, our next item on the agenda is public comment, and I want to ask Madam City Clerk first if she'd like to read any of the public comments that came in And I believe we asked for all emailed comments to come in before 3 o'clock today, and she will go ahead and read those for us.
Mayor, the city received 3 emails. One of them was for, one email for items not on the agenda. Oh, I apologize. We didn't receive any emails for items not on the agenda. These were for items on the agenda. Some of these individuals indicated that they would try to attend the meeting, but
Okay.
I'm not sure if they're here or not.
Great, so we will go ahead and ask before items when they come up on the agenda. So we will go ahead and open up now for public comment for items not on the agenda. And if you have a comment, please come up to the podium. We do have our timing here to the left, and also if you can state your name. Left and right. Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Anyone here for items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to presentations. First item up for presentation is the proclamation to declare March as Red Cross Month. And as Madam City Clerk had shared, we do not have anyone here for that, but let me just read at least a portion of this. And we're offering our certificate of recognition to the American Red Cross for the month of March 2021. Whereas March is American Red Cross Month, a special time to recognize and thank those who volunteer their time and service to help their neighbors when they are in need. Nearly 200 years since the birth of American Red Cross, founder Clara Barton, we dedicate this month of March to all those who continue to advance her noble legacy, and we ask others to join in their commitment to care for people in need. And whereas American Red Cross heroes are on the front lines every day, they volunteer their time, give blood, take life-saving courses, or provide financial donations to help those in need. They work tirelessly to help in time of disaster, when someone needs life-saving blood or the comfort of a helping hand. During the trying times of the coronavirus pandemic, people have stepped up to help others in need. Whether it was responding to this year's record-breaking disasters across the country or rolling up their sleeves to give blood when our country faced a severe blood shortage. And whereas when an injured service member ended up in a hospital far from home, the American Red Cross offered comfort. When a hospital patient needed blood, American Red Cross blood donors helped them. When a lifeguard jumped in to save a drowning child or someone stepped up to help a heart attack victim, the American Red Cross was there. And whereas we dedicate the month of March to all those who support the American Red Cross mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies, our community depends on the American Red Cross, which relies on donations of time, money, and blood to fulfill its humanitarian mission. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the City of Sierra Madre Council that the month of March 2021 is American Red Cross Month in the City of Sierra Madre, and encourage all Americans to support this organization and its noble humanitarian mission. Presented this 9th day of March 2021, proclaimed by the City Council of the City of Sierra Madre, Mayor Rachel Arizmendi, Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss, Councilmember Edward Garcia, Kelly Creeds, and Robert Parkhurst. So thank you, Red Cross, for all that you do. Next item on our agenda is presentation by Sierra Madre Fire Chief Brett Bartlett on the California Conservation Corps project. Chief?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Council. Kind of being as this is going to be my first presentation as Fire Chief, I'm glad it's on a great topic, actually. Just to kind of give you a brief summary, the city is going to be partnering with the California Conservation Corps, or known as CCC, on a project that's going to be titled Sierra Madre Fire Hazard Fire Hazard Reduction and Habitat Restoration. California Conservation Corps appropriated greenhouse gas reduction funds, which fall under the California Air Resource Board, or better known as CARB. The project funding is going to total approximately $400,000 and will be directed towards Corps members' labor, training, project-related operation expenditures. The project is designed to mitigate the wildfire hazards adjacent to homes and population, changing the potential fire behavior by modeling the vegetation arrangement, reducing fire intensity, firebrand impact, to the treatment areas adjacent to homes and population. CCC crews will work on a total of about 41 acres split between both Bailey Canyon Trail and the Mount Wilson Trail areas. They're going to be focusing on removing the more flammable fuels and undesirable non-native plants and reducing the vegetative, horizontal, and vertical ladder fuels. Non-native grasses will be removed or cut to at least 3 inches or less and then left in place. Tree canopy will be lifted, to 7 feet above the ground. The project will remove only the necessary amount of vegetation to reduce the fire hazard. Cut material will then be left in place utilizing what they refer to as a lock and scatter technique, which will help reduce rainfall impacts, water runoff, and help maintain the soil moisture. Shade fuel break method will be applied to maintain the plant canopy and providing shade. And, also maintaining the existing canopy along with the lop and scatter technique will reduce an invasive or reduce the invasion of non-native plant species in the treatment area. The project is going to be overseen by the fire department, and we're anticipating the start of that to be April 1st. Really, there's no contribution on behalf of the city other than a signed agreement with the California Conservation Corps, letter of support, and a letter of completion once it's done. So we're really excited about the project, especially as it's coming on the good end here of the Bobcat fire. Still fresh in everybody's mind how close it did come to us, and hopefully we're going to get a better reduction out of our local fuels, especially since we got a new season coming back up. So very excited about that and partnering with them. And that's the end of my report. Available for any questions.
Thank you, Chief. And you're right. I think the timing is perfect for this project. Wanted to bring back to council to see if there are any questions for Chief Bartlett.
Madam Mayor, I just want to thank you for the good news. It's fantastic.
Absolutely welcome. Yeah, we're very pleased with this and the opportunity to partner with them, and hopefully it will be a partnership we'll be able to take on into the future as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions for Chief?
Yeah, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Parkhurst.
Chief Bartlett, you applied for this grant? Or the city applied for this grant? Let me ask it more.
To be forefront on this, it was a package wrapped up in a bow for us. Thankfully, our neighbors to the west, Pasadena, had this project already going, and for reasons they backed out of it basically. So it was through relationships that we've already fostered and basically Captain Snyder and his relationships. We got the call saying that they needed to spend this money and we were interested. So we jumped through every hoop we could in about a week's time and got approved to basically take that funding and give the project, help them have a space for that project. So.
Thank you for your efforts on this. This is something that is a high priority for me, for the city, is to try to take care of that area right behind us that hasn't been burned in so long. And I'm thrilled to see that we're working on it and really look forward to getting this underway. Just quickly as a framework, the money for this comes from taxes on polluters in the state. It comes from them reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. And this money is made available for us to do things like this. And so it's one of the things that, one of the reasons I'm proud to be a Californian, I'm proud to see the leadership that we've got at the state level to help make sure that we can continue to live in this phenomenal community.
And Councilmember Parkhurst, considering some of the concerns that you've brought up, again, this is very timely, and it sounds like we have to thank our neighbors for giving us money. We're happy to spend it in the right way.
We're very, very pleased that absolutely.
Any other comments, questions for Chief Bartlett? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item looks like the item I imagine most of you are here for, unless you're excited about masonry. We do have handouts that's available to the public, and I believe it is right management analyst is pointing to where those in the public, if you'd like a copy of the presentation, you're more than welcome to pick that up. And if we run out, we can either make more copies and or make sure that gets out electronically. So with that, I am going to ask our guests from New Urban West, Jason Hahn and Jonathan Frankel, to come up to the podium. And welcome, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. If I closer to you, please. Thank you. Closer, please. There you go. Excellent.
Great. Well, good evening. Maybe too close.
There you go.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. My name is Jonathan Frankel, and on behalf of the New Urban West project team, it's my great pleasure to be here with you this afternoon to present to you, discuss our progress on the Meadows and Bailey Canyon project. In addition to myself, we have a number of members of our team here this afternoon, including our company president, Adam Browning, partner Jason Hahn, and a number of members of our community outreach team, John Musella, Peter Warder, and Carly Keats as well. Thank you very much to staff for helping me with this presentation in the outdoor setting. I appreciate it, and we can go ahead and move to the next slide. Well, we were really grateful and honored to be selected by Madre, the Passionists in the province, to be the stewards of this property and develop a thoughtful and comprehensive plan for development. As you all are aware, the Passionists and Madre have been a part of Sierra Madre for nearly 100 years. And in selecting a development partner, they were very intent on engaging with the group that was committed to reaching out to the community, to respecting the property, but also to our neighbors as well as the objectives of the city. They've been engaged in really incredible work during the COVID-19 pandemic, preparing hundreds of meals every day for food insecure families throughout the San Gabriel Valley. And so again, to support their work is a great honor and a privilege. Next slide, please. So for those not familiar with our work at New Urban West, we are a privately held residential real estate development firm based in Southern California. This is our 68th year in operation as a company. And throughout that time, we have found consistently that good places and good projects are first and foremost designed in collaboration with the community. So obviously this project is no exception. I look forward to speaking with you about our community outreach efforts today. Next slide, please. So whenever we start a project, we always think about what are our objectives? What are we hoping to achieve? And what are the values and the mission that's going to guide us in our design and in implementation of the project? And here we had four primary objectives. First and foremost, respect the existing community character, the heritage of the city of Sierra Madre. Secondly, as I mentioned, support the Passionists and the retreat center and their needs and objectives. Thirdly, thoughtfully integrate any new housing into the existing community. And finally, provide public benefits. And we're looking forward to speaking to you about the planned new Meadows Park, as well as sustainability features like net zero water usage. Next slide, please. So we've been engaging with the community since last summer. We've had the opportunity to meet with over 200 residents at this point. This past week, we held 2 virtual community workshops with over 100 attendees. Just earlier this afternoon, we met with Westside neighbors and had an opportunity to visit with them in their yards to discuss concerns particular to their property. And so the general feedback that we've heard has been kind of 3 or 4 key things. Firstly, individuals are concerned about traffic and how we're going to address that in the project, and that's very critical. Secondly, there was excitement about the park, but there was a desire to see this park space be passive space as opposed to active ball fields, front and headlights type of space. Nextly, ensure a high quality development. So ensuring that this is not cookie cutter, that this is unique and diverse, as is the case in the existing community in Sierra Madre. Impacts to wildlife and fire safety are critical, but above all, what we heard from members of the community was ensure that this project is Sierra Madre quality, and I will talk in just a moment about how we intend to achieve that. Next slide, please. So our design approach, 3 general kind of aspects to our design approach. And then I am very honored that 2 of our design professionals, our leads, John Vandeveld and Adele Chang, are here this evening. John, of course, being a former member of the city's planning commission, has been a wonderful guide for us and a tour guide, really educating us on the history of Sierra Madre and exposing us to a lot of the existing styles that are in the community today. So three key aspects to our design approach. Firstly, do your homework. That started with John and his coordination with Debbie at the library, amongst others, to really understand the history and the heritage of Sierra Madre. Secondly, that is assemble the right team. And I mentioned John and Dell, who have extensive experience in the city of Sierra Madre, and we're really grateful to be working with them. We've identified 4 potential architectural styles that will be incorporated into the Meadows project. That is the Craftsman Spanish, farmhouse, and a modern style. And we will walk you through what those may look like in just a moment. Next slide, please. So once we develop our objectives, what do we hope to achieve? What is our approach to design? How do we assemble the right team, understand the history of the town? Then we turn to our planning approach. How are we going to comprehensively and thoughtfully plan this project? And so that generally, there are 6 components to this process for us internally. Firstly, understanding context. Very much related to doing your homework and understanding the history of the town, but it's also understanding adjacencies, meaning what is around you today and how can you be sensitive to those uses. So as I mentioned, we visited with West Side neighbors today. We've spoken with neighbors to the south, and we've worked to the maximum extent possible to incorporate concepts that minimize impacts on our adjacent neighbors. Secondly, engagement. So very, very pleased to have such a robust engagement with the Sierra Madre community, over 200 residents to date, and that will be ongoing. We have a number of presentations scheduled for local social and charitable organizations, nonprofit organizations, and other civic institutions in town to make sure they're engaged in providing their feedback on the project as well. So we have been working very closely with staff and want to express our appreciation very much to Claire and Vincent for their work with us on the creation of a specific plan for the project. And the specific plan, as you know, is a tool permitted by the government code that allows for a comprehensive plan of development for the property. So it's not just homes. We're also thinking very much about parkland and open space amenities and critically infrastructure. So all the things that you don't see. And you don't hear about roads, water, sewer, water treatment, and water quality, as well as sustainability features, all are incorporated into the specific plan, creating that comprehensive plan of development. Next slide, please. So our final 3 steps, the environmental impact report. As is required by California law, this project will be subject to the Environmental Quality Act, which will require the preparation of an environmental impact report. That report will comprehensively study and analyze a wide variety of topics, of course, including traffic, impacts to wildlife, wildfire, amongst other critical issues. And that, again, will be released by the city for a public review period. That is a 2-month period in which members of the public have the opportunity to comment on the proposed project, on that document, and the analysis contained therein. Of course, the city will be responding to those comments. And finally, we look forward to returning to you hopefully in the late summer for your consideration of the specific plan, the environmental impact report, and any associated entitlements that we'll be seeking. And of course, that will be at a public hearing where we anticipate the Sierra Madre community will be participating as well. Next slide, please. So of course, when we think about what would be planned here, we of course think about the existing zoning and what can be built today under the existing zoning. And as you're aware, and as was outlined in the memorandum of understanding that was executed between the Passionists and the city last spring, the general plan and the zoning designates this property for institutional uses. And what that would permit is hospitals, communal residential facilities, schools, other uses that as we evaluated them, it was very clear that they would be far more impactful on the existing Sierra Madre community in a variety of ways. Next slide, please. So this is one example of a prior proposal not under consideration today, but this is a communal living facility and assisted living. This is a 3-story building and with a couple hundred beds, again, permitted by the existing institutional zoning. Next slide, please. Similarly allowed in the institutional zone is a private school. We know that a number of private schools have approached the Passionists in years past about locating a new school facility on the site. And I'll talk about the relative comparison between a private school from a traffic standpoint and the proposed development in the Meadows a little later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So very quickly, the project description after analyzing our project objectives, finding our team, setting our design and planning approaches, and understanding what can be built today under the existing zoning, we settled on this project description, which is consistent with the MOU proposed last spring. And that is 42 single-family detached homes. There's a 3-acre public park. And the park includes a dedicated funding source that will alleviate any ongoing maintenance operation costs from the city or the taxpayers. A diversity of designs, it's a range of home styles and sizes. A net zero water usage. And we're looking forward to being innovative with respect to sustainability and ensuring that the project places no new net demand on city's local water supply and local aquifer. In addition, we have implemented a project design with respect to stormwater that will capture stormwater on site, both treat it and capture it on site, and it will infiltrate back into the local aquifer, ensuring that not only are we placing no new demand on local water resources, but we're actually replenishing local water resources. Preservation of open space, there's an open space area depicted, and we've been working closely with staff on the potential for dedication of a significant amount of open space acreage to the north of the existing retreat center. And finally, I mentioned respect for our neighbors, minimizing light, noise, traffic impacts, and other issues. Next slide, please. So this slide depicts the site plan as it currently exists. Again, 42 residential units. The lot sizes range from approximately 8,000 square feet to approximately 20,000 square feet. Homes range from 25 to 3,800 square feet, with a maximum building height of 25 feet. These are 1- and 2-story homes. Parking, of course, is required for all homes, 2-car garage with a 2-car driveway plus on-street guest parking. Next slide, please. So circulation, great questions from the community about how do people get in and out and how do they circulate about the project site. So something that we've thought a lot about, primary access will be from Sunnyside. And then we have 3 internal streets. From north to south, currently they're A, B, and C Street. These streets, importantly, are single loaded streets. And what that means is there are only homes on one side of the street. And we have roughly located the same number of lots in each one of the internal streets. And that just provides for a more even distribution of traffic within the project site, as well as ensuring you don't get congestion or clustering of cars all going to one location. Secondary access will be provided at Carter, and that will be a one-way egress only proposed at this time. We also have, and we've been working closely with the city on direct connectivity to Bailey Canyon. We know Bailey Canyon is such a wonderful resource. I had the opportunity to hike in Bailey Canyon, and I really enjoyed it and really appreciate the value that it brings to to the community. And so we're looking forward to connecting the new Meadows Park to Bailey Canyon directly, facilitating even greater access to such a wonderful community resource. Next slide, please. So what you see here is a rendering of the entry view, and this is from Sunnyside looking to the north. And you can see the primary entry with homes to the north, and the Meadows Park would be to the right side of the screen where you see the 2 individuals walking. Again, this will be where the gates currently exist roughly. That area will no longer be gated, and those gates will be relocated further to the north to accommodate retreat center activities. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the existing uses that would be permitted under the institutional zone. And this provides, firstly, an aggregate average daily trip comparison between the Meadows, a communal living facility, and a private school. These are based on public trip generation rates as promulgated by the Institute of Traffic Engineers. And so as you can see, the Meadows generates a little less than 400 average daily trips as compared to a communal living facility with over 1,300. A private school with over 5,000. So a private school thus generates 13 times the amount of traffic as compared to the Meadows. Communal living facility is 3.5 times. And in any case, the Meadows generates at least 70% less traffic than either of these uses permitted by the existing zone. Next slide, please. So this gives you a comparison of morning and evening trips. And when most individuals talk to us about experiencing traffic congestion, it is of course in the morning AM commute and the PM commute hours. So you can see the Meadows project, we expect 31 trips in the morning and 42 trips in the evening time associated with the project. As compared to a private school, you have nearly 2,000 morning trips, obviously lots of people coming in the morning, and in the evening about 375. A communal residential facility, about 90 in the morning and 110. So you see a substantial difference in AM and PM trips, greatly reducing congestion as compared to other existing uses that would be permitted by city code. Next slide, please. So we've been talking with a lot of residents this week. I've been curious about how would I experience or get an understanding of how many cars this project would generate. And what we always like to do is look at existing areas within the community where they could actually go and see roughly this number of homes and how many cars are coming and going. So if you look at Crestdale Drive and Sierra Key, these are two streets. These are single points of access off of Fairview in the existing community, and there's 47 homes total. So if you were to go onto Fairview today and stand on Fairview between Sierra Key and Crestvale and actually evaluate the number of cars, that would be more traffic than would be associated with the project. So any member of the community that's interested in how many cars would be generated, I think that's a pretty good example that we would see in the existing community. Next slide. So I mentioned our primary objective was to ensure consistency with the existing community character. And we do that through architectural styles, but we also do it through robust landscape. And this is an image that depicts the new development as compared to the adjacent residential uses to the south, to the west, and to a lesser extent to our east as well. And so I think what you can see is a lot of folks said, well, where's the development here? And that is exactly the point, that our project will integrate very nicely, be very comparable to what's in the existing community, and will integrate well and add important community benefits. Next slide, please. So we've been spending lots of time thinking about our neighbors, both to the south and the west, and this continues to evolve as we engage with our neighbors and continue to make adjustments to the plan. But with respect to the Good Neighbor Plan, we have incorporated expanded rear separation between the new and existing homes. We have a dedicated buffer of 20 feet, consistent with the MOU, which will be an area where there will be no structures of any type. We are working to prohibit accessory structures in the rear yard along the west side, as well as record restricted use covenants to prevent amplified sound, light, and other potential intrusions onto the privacy of those neighbors. Next slide, please. So this, we just wanted to depict the separation between structures, between the proposed new homes at the Meadows and the existing homes along Edgeview to our west. And so as you can see, ranging from 170 feet down to around 105 feet, all certainly consistent with what you would typically see in the city of Sierra Madre. Next slide, please. So at this time, I'm very pleased to welcome Adele Chang and John Vandeveld, who are going to provide a little bit of information about the styles that we've selected and a little bit more about our design process. So I think at this time, I would like to welcome John, and John will be followed by Adele.
Good evening, Council. For those that I haven't met or did not participate in the last two public workshops, I don't want to be too redundant, but just to give you a little background. I've lived in town since 1993. I got my license to practice architecture in 95. And since 1999, I've run my own one-man operation as an architectural firm, focusing exclusively on single-family residential projects. So I was contacted by New Urban West to basically act as a field guide for them to get perspective on this project. One, as a local resident, two, as a local architect, and then, as Jonathan mentioned, a former planning commission. My last year on the commission was in 2013, so it seemed like a good fit as far as giving them a resource in terms of understanding our town's context. And we don't have time to go through it tonight. I know we have a full presentation, but part of my process was I compiled about 150 photos of homes within our town and gave them a breakdown in terms of the history And again, I don't want to be too redundant for those that were at the previous workshops, but our town really boils down to 4 layers in terms of its architectural DNA. Its first layer that I call the pioneer days is that era where we saw a lot of Victorian and farmhouse kind of agrarian based structures pop up in town. And that went from the 1880s to the 1890s. The Craftsman style took over in the 1900s and really is the most dominant style. I think for anybody that comes to our town, they're going to come away with feeling like that's probably the most pervasive architectural style in our town. After the 20s, we had this, that's when the Spanish style really took over. It lasted from the 20s to the 30s. And then finally, we have the emergence of the mid-century modern that took over in the 40s and carried through into the 50s and 60s. And those photos that you're going to see tonight, some of those are examples of homes. One, it's diverse, and 2, they've all made a very genuine effort to understand our context by reaching out to people like myself and Debbie Henderson. And I think it's no mistake that based on all this research they've done as far as compatibility, the 4 styles you're going to see tonight are really kind of the 4 styles that you look back throughout the history of our town, and it just makes sense. I think it's a good fit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Adele.
Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Adele Chang. I have been an architect for almost 40 years now. I used to sit on the design review committee of San Marino, so I kind of understand and have all the same, been through all the considerations of compatibility and so forth. I am also currently on the board of counselors for the School of Architecture at USC. And so I'm very involved with professional development of young architects. I have worked on projects big and small, from custom single family residences to developments such as this. So next slide. Oh no, before. That slide is good. So John has been very helpful, and what you see on this slide on the right side are examples in Sierra Madre of the farmhouse style. And then on the left are kind of precedent images, kind of our inspiration images. Next slide. So I'm going to show you some super early conceptual sketches. I mean, we don't usually share this early to an official body such as you guys, but I think in the spirit of engaging the community and getting kind of early information out, these are just concepts very early. We went with a sort of a kit of parts approach, and with the farmhouse style, as you saw in the previous slide, vertical siding is very prominent. And we also utilize the idea of a porch and elements such as possibly a metal roof over the porch, in contrast with the main roof. Historically, farmhouses were built over time and over generations. As the family grew, they needed more space and they used available materials and added. So farmhouse could have lots of different wings and parts and possibly even materials. Next slide. So next, as John had mentioned, the Craftsman Style is also very prominent in Sierra Madre. And again, on the right, there are actually addresses if you're looking. Examples from around Sierra Madre. And on the left are our precedent images. Next. So the Craftsman Style, again, a super early hand sketch. It has elements such as a lower roof pitch, wide overhangs and eaves, again, the front porch. And we have been told by John how Sierra Madre is a front porch community. People use their porches. It's not just decorative, and I think that's wonderful. Also, part of the Craftsman Style would be the use of wood siding or shingles and possibly a masonry base and so forth. And then the Spanish Style, also commonly seen around town. I look behind me and I see some over there. And this is typical in Southern California. So again, on the right, examples from all around Sierra Madre. And then on the left, the image that shows kind of what we're looking for. Again, early sketch. Spanish Style, of course, with its stucco and tile roof. Those are some of the key elements. And then the simplicity of the forms and massing, and also the possible use of arches. Next. The Modern Style. The Modern Style actually is a historical style. It's modern as distinct from contemporary. Contemporary could go a little crazy and may not fit in the city. But modernism is something that began in the early 1900s and really flowered in Southern California in the 50s and 60s, kind of that mid-century era. And you do actually have quite a few examples of that in Sierra Madre, as you can see on the slides to the right. Next. So the Modern Style is one that could have flat roofs, or it could also have sloping roofs. There's a little bit more freedom in terms of the form, and also the ability to mix different materials. Interesting materials that add warmth, such as wood and masonry, mixed in with stucco and maybe a little bit of metal trim.
Thank you so much, Adele and John. And in addition to Adele and John, we're really excited to be working with a number of other architects. I mean, typically in a project, you would have one lead architect or architectural firm. But we elected not to do that here. In fact, we have 5 architectural firms working on this project. It was very intentional. In an effort to ensure diversity of design, we retained these various firms, each of whom has experience and expertise in a particular style that we're proposing. And so that diversity of thought in assembling a team in that way is really consistent with the overall project objective to ensure Sierra Madre quality of this project. So a couple of final views of the park, so this is a rendering showing you, it's an internal view. This is from Sunnyside looking north and east, roughly on Street B. And what it illustrates is a single loaded street concept, which provides for a really wonderful opportunity for a robust landscape along the slope. And so you see here, when you pull in to your house and get out of your car, and turn around, you're not going to be looking at their house. You're going to be looking at a really nice landscape slope. Next slide, please. So we're extremely excited about the Meadows Park, a brand new 3-acre facility for the entirety of the community to enjoy. And when we met with residents, both recently and over the summer, they provided kind of 3 key features and 3 pieces of feedback for us. Firstly, make this park designed for passive use to minimize noise, light, and other issues. Again, no ball field, sport courts, or high volume lighting. And finally, a direct connection to Bailey Canyon. So we've incorporated play areas for children, both large and small, spaces for meditation, picnic, and relaxing with family and friends, but we do not envision any high intensity active uses. Next slide. So this is the first of 2 renderings of the future Meadows Park. This is looking to the west from the parking lot off of Carter Avenue. So you can see the play areas in the foreground, some seating, places to read a book, gather with friends, and some signage directing folks over to Bailey Canyon. And in the background, you have the grassy gathering spaces, which we will depict on the next slide, please. So the opposite view, looking back to the east, and you can see here in the foreground, the grassy spaces, places to walk a dog, again, throw a frisbee, and relax, and just kind of hang with friends. Next slide, please. And with that, we're so grateful for your time. We know you're very busy, and we appreciate the opportunity to provide this update. Of course, myself or our team would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Frankel. I know that folks are here to make comments and to have questions, but before we do that, I would like to ask if the City Council has any questions for Mr. Frankel or anyone on the team.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Creed.
I'm just wondering if you would want to take this opportunity to publicize any of the upcoming community outreach efforts, just so folks here can have knowledge of when those other opportunities might arise.
Sure. So we have a number of engagements with local organizations upcoming, and I don't want to be rude. I can look at my phone and I can tell you when they are because I don't know them off the top of my head. I would also just like to take a moment. We do have a website. It is supportthemonastery.com. Go there to sign up for updates. Also, we have a very small gallery in the back that we set up that has the information really blown up large on boards. So if you have specific questions and you want to engage with us, our team will be here for the duration of the meeting this evening. So please feel free to engage with us. With that, I will take a quick look at my calendar. So next week we have a couple of meetings. Firstly, we will be at the Sierra Madre Chamber of Commerce Wednesday the 17th at 4 p.m. That is followed by the following week. We do have another couple of meetings scheduled, and let me try and find them.
And Ms. Frankel, as you're looking for that, we're getting some feedback. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but it sounds like a radio. Fixed it. Great. Thank you. It's been driving me crazy. Thank you.
Well, I will go ahead, Councilmember Cruz, I'll go ahead and find those other dates. I'd be happy to pass them along to staff. I don't want to take up any more of your time looking for that, but we do have the Sierra Madre Community Foundation, the Chamber of Commerce, Kiwanis, and other meetings that are planned over the next couple of weeks where you can come and engage with us.
And actually, Mr. Frankel, I am going to ask because we may have other questions, but if you can look those up, I think it would be helpful for those that are watching whether they're streaming or not, to have those meeting times available so we can share it. But we'll give you some time for that. But are there any other questions? Member Garcia?
Yeah, I have 3, so I don't want to take up all the time on the dais. I want other council members to have opportunity, so I'll ask one. And then
Sure.
That makes sense. Mr. Frankel, thank you for your presentation. I did attend Wednesday's virtual meeting. It was very informative. So my first question is regarding the trip analysis. I want to make sure there's full transparency. We have a good understanding of how that was done. I guess it's a two-part question for this one. Was that an independent study, or was that based on metrics regarding traffic engineers, first of all?
So that analysis was produced by Ferry Pierce, who's a consultant to us and to the city and to many jurisdictions throughout Southern California, and it was based on information inputs provided by the Institute of Traffic Engineers.
Okay, thank you. And building on that, regarding the two institutional use relative to the residential use, are those proposals as far as the trip analysis based on what could be built to max capacity up there, or is that what would likely be built?
Yeah, so obviously you have to make some assumptions, and what we did was we looked at the total acreage of the property. We made some reasonable assumptions about building coverage and other things that you would typically do from a site design standpoint. And so we think that that represents a likely scenario for institutional development.
Okay, thank you.
Questions on this side, Councilmember Parkhurst?
Yes, I have two. So one, in your timeline, this is a quick and small one. You have the public review of the EAR in May, June, and then council in August. I don't see planning commission on there. I assume it's your intent to take this to planning commission, is that right?
Yes, of course, Councilmember Parker. So of course, prior to council consideration, it will go to the planning commission for a recommendation.
So the second, this is going to be just a minute. I ask the indulgences of my fellow council members. There's a bit of background I'd like to give to this. You know, as Madam Mayor mentioned earlier, climate change is something that is something that I'm passionate about, and it's going to be the largest challenge that I'm going to face in my lifetime and my children are going to face. And so I want to know a little bit more about your plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the homes and any plans you have to offset the impacts of the emissions you cannot eliminate. In addition to the overall impact of the homes, I'm particularly interested in the considerations you've made relative to gas use in the homes. A recent study by Lawrence Berkeley Lab found that the indoor air quality of Southern California homes with fossil gas stoves is so bad, it would be illegal if that air was outdoors. Last November, the California Air Resources Board voted to support all electric building policies based on research showing that indoor air pollution created by fossil gas appliances increased the risk of lifetime asthma symptoms by 42% for children. More than 40 cities in California have adopted building codes that encourage all electric infrastructure or require buildings to be ready for all electric appliances. The US Census Bureau reported last year that more than half the homes built from 2010 to 2017 use electric space heating, water heating, cooking, and clothes drying. And finally, 9 of the top 10 cooktops rated by Consumer Reports last year were electric. So with that background in mind, can you provide the council or include in the EIR what considerations you've made about offsetting the overall greenhouse gas emissions that cannot be eliminated from the homes, and provide your considerations in making the new homes all electric?
Yes, Councilmember Parker's a really important issue with respect to sustainability, of course, is our carbon footprint and GHG emissions. So short answer to the EIR is yes, absolutely. The EIR will include a comprehensive analysis of greenhouse gas emissions, both associated with the project in the near term as well as in the long term as well, the 2050 scenario. And that includes extensive modeling, utilizing the Air Resources Board approved CalEmon software and other models that we use to determine the carbon footprint of our homes. It is of course the case that new home construction is far more sustainable than existing construction. All of these homes will have solar, they will be EV ready, and the California Building Code, Cal Green, is extremely progressive in terms of looking at meeting AB 32 GHG emission targets over a long time horizon. So all of that will be included in the EIR, and it's something that we will be addressing through both building design as well as in the environmental review process.
I know we have some other questions from Councilmember Garcia, but Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any questions?
I do. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Franklin. Speaking with some residents, some questions came up in my mind, and I just wanted to see if you could address them. I'm interested in the buffer zone on the west side of the development. I understand that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the actual, oh, sorry, okay, got it. I understand that the actual, and if I'm wrong, change, disabuse me of this. The actual backyard of the developments that will be right up against the west property lines, existing homes, will be about 30 feet from the property line to the house, back of the house that you're building. Is that correct?
That is not correct. So generally, so the actual distance or the width of the rear yard, it varies throughout the site. So our lots vary in size. And so on some of the larger lots, you have 70 or 80 feet in the yard, and some of the smaller lots, you have a smaller distance. And so we're working right now to determine how to push those homes on the west as far away from existing neighbors as possible. And so where we land precisely, I think, is to be determined, but it will be a greater distance than 30 feet. I can assure you that.
Okay. So there is no buffer zone per se, where the end of the property, back of the property line, say on Edgeview, there'd be no buffer zone from that property line to the property line of the first developed house.
So what we're evaluating now, so we had kind of two concepts that we evaluated. One was a dedicated buffer zone, which is an area with perhaps landscaping and nothing else that would not be a part of a new rear yard. And so that is a dedicated, we'll call it the dedicated buffer zone concept. The second concept was because there was some concern expressed about security issues related to having somewhat of a no man's land, an area that's unmonitored and kind of potentially unmaintained in that area, including that within a lot, but placing building restrictions and other restricted covenants, as I mentioned, on that space to ensure that it's maintained and it doesn't become a security concern, but there are ways that we address privacy and concerns like that. So even just today, we met with West Side neighbors to discuss which option they preferred. And I think that we're going to continue to work with them on that and devising a solution that works best for the West Side neighbors.
Well, thank you for that. Another question. Over on the Carter entrance, at one point, was a consideration given for that to be both an exit and an entrance? And now it's just an exit, correct?
Correct, Councilman.
Why was that changed?
Yeah, so a few reasons. Primarily because as we look at the traffic generation associated with the project, we look at how many cars are coming and going, and we look at the performance of the adjacent roadways, and we ask, how many points of access are required to accommodate that traffic? So the principal reason is because we demonstrated that we could safely and effectively accommodate the proposed traffic off of a single point of access off of Sunnyside. It would not cause unacceptable delays or a degradation in level of service in the adjacent roads. And so, notwithstanding that, we do want to be sensitive to the even distribution of traffic. And so by allowing egress at that point, both for retreat center activities and for on-site residents, allowing that to be a one-way doesn't require us to expand into the adjacent Bailey Canyon Park, which is parkland that we were sensitive to maintaining the existing condition. And so the data that was provided, that was the determinant.
Can you tell me precisely how many two-story homes will be built out of the 42 homes?
So we're still working on the exact ratio, Councilmember Goss, and we will have that information for you when we return for council consideration. Of course, for planning committee.
I'm interested in what you're talking about.
Without my
Mr. Milan, are we okay on the audio end? Okay, everyone. So again, we will reconvene from our short recess. Sounds like we still have some interference, but definitely not as bad as it was earlier. So please thank you all for lining up. And if the first person would like to step to the mic, and if you can share your name, and you have oh, well, there you go, Mr. Bryant. And then we also have 3-minute timer there, and I'm really going to ask for folks to stick to the 3-minute timer. We have a lot of people that want to speak. I don't want to bring out the hook, but again, please be respectful of the time, and we'll make sure to get your full allotted time, Mr. Bryant.
Good evening, council members and Madam Mayor. You hear me?
And just a reminder to folks, we do have Mr. Carlson that'll be cleaning the microphone and wiping down the podium, but if you can please speak into the mic so everyone can hear. Much appreciated.
Good evening, city council members and Madam Mayor. Is that okay? Great. Matt Bryant, 635 Edgeview Drive. I'm also on the steering committee for the Stop the Monastery Housing Project Coalition. And we obviously have some problems with this project. We haven't seen the EIR report yet. We haven't seen the specific plan. So I'm just going to be a little bit narrower in what I'm going to be addressing. New Urban West has what they call a good neighbor plan, okay? Mayor De La Rosa for years has talked about being sensitive to neighbors. New Urban West has talked about being sensitive to neighbors, and they have the good neighbor plan. The problem is none of the neighbors think it's good. And just looking at the residents from Sunnyside, I know Madam Mayor and Councilmember Goss, you were at a city council meeting a few years ago when the neighbors on Sunnyside were concerned just about the traffic coming from the retreat center. I think they might have wanted speed bumps or something, but they were very passionate about just the traffic coming from the retreat center. And now you're going to add to that the traffic coming from 42 homes and a park. And now it transpires that the additional egress point that was over on Carter is only going to be an egress point. And so that means it's going to put additional traffic pressure on Sunnyside. That's the only way to get up into this whole thing. I think that's going to be a real issue for those neighbors. I happen to live on the west side. And the west side neighbors are concerned with this initial artist rendering that we see, where they have that road that comes and wraps over to the left and gets very close to the back of our property line. And the problem for us is going to be, where does the first building start from the back of my property line, in our west neighbor's property line? And right now, if you measure most of the houses back there, we have probably maybe around 70 feet from the rear of our house to the back of our property line. But what I'm seeing from them, it's only going to be about 30 feet from our rear property line to when the first building, first house starts. And that's a substandard backyard. I've been in real estate for over 30 years. A backyard that has only 30 feet from the rear of the house is very substandard. So we have a lot of concerns about that. So there's no upside for us. All we're going to have is our privacy destroyed, our views destroyed, the loss of value of our homes, and to add insult to injury, we're going to have 2 or more years of construction noise that we have to do. So, I don't know how this is going to end up, but we have a lot of concerns about that. And the fact that New Urban West, and we've thought about this for a long time, that they can't tell us whether there's going to be 1-story or 2-story homes immediately adjacent to this.
Thank you.
So those are our concerns. I'm sure some other people are going to have some additional concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am going to ask, if the audience can refrain from clapping, booing, making noises. We really want to make sure that we can hear the speakers and we can respect the speakers as well as the rest of the audience. Thank you.
Sorry, no.
Hello, good evening. My name is Alex Arietta, and I also live on the west side. I wanted to share some of the same concerns that Matt shared, but I also wanted to address a couple of other issues around the increased fire risk that will occur in that area with the addition of 42 homes. Over this past summer, all of us experienced significant, the heroic efforts of our firemen and women who were putting out fires came very close to us, but there were helicopters landing right in the west field for staging of the fires. And that happened repeatedly over last summer. And I'm very concerned that we are only going to exacerbate the fire risk with this additional density of housing and people. Number two, I'm concerned about the fact that this will be annihilating the last open space in Sierra Madre. It's a beautiful city. My family and I lived here for several years. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful, and that's the last remaining open space. And for some reason, the Passionists have lost the interest in what was initially in their mission to keep this place special so people can come here and enjoy its serenity. That's going to be obliterated. I'm very concerned about that. Thirdly, I'm concerned about the overall change in the quality of life and how fast this is happening. This process started last year during the pandemic, and we're still in the pandemic. And while Urban West talks about the public outreach they've been doing, imagine what other, how many more people would be aware of this if we weren't doing this in the middle of a pandemic. So I would like to ask the City Council, as you begin to consider this largest property development in the history of Sierra Madre, to be mindful of that and to be thoughtful around the timing. And I was even asking that the project be delayed until the pandemic is over, so more public reception and attention can be brought to this development. It's very, very concerning that it seems that this project is being ran through very quickly with not enough public debate. And I'm sorry, Zoom calls do not take the place of in-person meetings like this where folks can see each other face to face, engage directly with the developer. I wish someone from the Passionist leadership team was here. Canthorne, whoever, they have lost sight of why that property is so special to the city, not just to Sierra Madre. A lot of people have come to this community from outside of Southern California, outside of Sierra Madre, excuse me, to appreciate the beauty of that land. And we're about to, well, hopefully not, but contemplating the decision where that will all be annihilated. And I'm very concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm Clyde Stoff. I live on Gatewood, and I've been around this area for 60 years. So the concern I had, frankly, with Sunnyside, I've walked that many, many times. It's a very narrow street. People park on it. How in the world are you going to get 400 cars a day up and down that without causing a huge mess at Grandview where you won't be able to make a left or a right turn? So that makes absolutely no sense. There isn't a traffic engineer in the world that would support that. Secondly, for over 2.5 years, my group tried to provide an option for both the monastery and the city, and we were rejected at every turn. It was an assisted living program, 90 rooms, maybe 100 cars a day of traffic, just like the Kensington. The community needs that project because the Kensington's full. And at every turn, we were told, we'll consider it, we'll consider it, we'll consider it. It was not considered. We were told we're under an exclusive MOU. We can't talk to you or it'll be torturous interference. So the citizens could have a very low impact, low coverage, very tranquil setting for seniors. They may want to retire here. The average age here is in the 60s. But that project was never considered. It was dead on arrival. Why that is, I don't know. And it supposedly was economics. We were never given economics. No one ever told us what the property would sell for. No one would listen to a proposal to buy it. So I find it, I have nothing against either the monastery. I support the monastery. I don't support the residential project. It's too much density, too many cars, and there are options. And there would be nowhere near 1,300 cars a day on the institutional option. That's a complete fallacy. I don't know where that came from. And by the way, people know this. So going forward, I'm hoping that this will be reconsidered. I mean, the renderings are beautiful. The architecture is beautiful. It's not about whether it's Spanish or Mediterranean or Craftsman architecture. That's not the point. The point is you got one chance to either screw this property up forever or do something that's low impact that everybody can still enjoy.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jay. I'm residential in Sierra Madre. I love this town. And for this 42 house project, I oppose. Last year, I heard this news, and also I wrote an article in the local newspaper. I sent every councilor and the mayor. And I don't think Sierra Madre people have any benefit of this intense residential house project. So please take our voice to reconsideration for this matter. That's very important for us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, Deirdre Murphy, 601 Woodland Drive in the Canyon. I just agree with what everybody said right before me. I want everyone to take a minute to look back at these mountains. And do we need 42 houses? Like, look at this. You don't find this anymore, 42 more houses. I'm not going to talk about infrastructure, fire, and floods, all of which I've experienced in the canyon, but there's far wiser people out there to address that. Bailey Canyon, I hike there every day. I agree with everybody. It's a pristine piece of property. It is beautiful. It should be available to everybody. We cannot ruin, this is one of our last chances, this pristine background behind me. It has to be rethought. 42 houses, traffic, fire, floods, not enough water. We're always in drought. Please think seriously about reconsidering this and not having this and all these meetings on Zoom during COVID. I'm a teacher. It's impossible. We need to be doing this better. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, if we can refrain from clapping and commenting, this is intended to be an informative time for people to comment on a potential project.
Hi, my name is Mike Lee. I'm new to Sierra Madre. Been here about 5 years, and my wife, she's been here all her life. Her parents have been here 20 plus years, more than that. And we love this city. And against what everybody—
Sorry, can you speak into the mic? Just
my apologies. Against what everybody's saying, I actually think the 42 properties might be a benefit. I mean, I love the neighbors. I love our neighborhood. It's nice to share that. My son's on the t-ball team, and Coach Garcia there has trained my son, and it would be, I think about it in a different way, right? It's 42 homes. That means 42 new families, 42 new neighbors. I understand that everyone is against it, and like I said, I'm thinking about it in a different term. Having more neighbors, having more families in the neighborhood, more kids, it's a benefit. I'm a young family, or we're a young family, and just getting into this neighborhood, we waited and waited and waited and waited until a home became available. And having these extra 40 homes, it'd be nice to have new neighbors come in and new families come in, new children. And in that sense, I think it would be a benefit to Sierra Madre. I don't believe 40 new homes is going to ruin the spirit of Sierra Madre. I don't believe it's going to be that detrimental to water or fire, or it's not going to ruin the backdrop. Everything will be the same, except we'll have 42 new families, 42 new, kids, or 84 more kids, something, that are going to be around. So in that sense, it would be nice. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hello, I'm Susan Newhausen. I live at the top of Grove Street. I totally disagree with what was just said, since 42 homes is going to have a lot of impact since I live right there. But I really think that this project really does not meet the spirit of Sierra Madre. Sierra Madre is a very diverse community, socially, economically. This is 42 homes that at the current market value, we're talking $1.5 million to $2.5 million homes. That's not going to have any diversity. That's it's inappropriate. That's not the spirit of the city. And as long as I still have time, it's zoned industrial. It should stay zoned. Institutional. It should stay zoned institutional. I think if they want to put a private school in, great. I don't believe there are numbers that there would be that many, and I actually think the whole thing of assisted living is a great idea for it. That institution, it would be perfect for older individuals to be able to have that beautiful setting. Having homes, all that extra traffic, it's just not worth it. I don't think the sewer system in Sierra Madre can support anything like that. I just totally disagree with this project, and I think there needs to be a lot more discussion, and it seems like it's being railroaded through, and it's already a done deal. I've heard nothing about being able to vote on change in zoning. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Again, please. Ms. Deb Sheridan is prepared for the weather.
I certainly am. I think, anyway, yes, Deb Sheridan, Valley Vista Drive. I am speaking only as a resident. But I must say that the four designs actually look different, and we are certainly worried about cookie cutters. But the massing is very similar. There is no example of a one-story house. So we keep hearing that there may be one stories, but they're not there. Now, let me tell you what really, really worries me, besides the fact that other people have said we're in the middle of a pandemic. I think this is going along way too fast. And you would have had many more people if we weren't in the middle of the pandemic. But these houses were designed by Ms. Adele Chang. And she has a history with us in Sierra Madre at One Carter. That was a nightmare that they had to, and she individually had to bring back the houses, the designs of the houses, because they were inappropriate. They did not meet our zoning laws. When bringing back one design, I remember in particular, she reduced the massing of the house by 6 inches. 6 inches. So that really worries me. My wish, should this go forward, and I hope you will get some sort of written promise that we architects will work with the city and not just threaten to sue us. And my second comment is about traffic, but you certainly heard that. And let me reiterate that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we have not been able to go up there and walk the site because of what's happening. So, but I have another question that somebody just told me that there is going to be a new retreat center that they're going to build up there. I hadn't heard about that at all. I So I don't know. I'm asking you and I'm asking Mr. Frankel. And oh, once again, thank you very much, City Council. Good evening.
Thank you. And again, we'll capture the questions and whether we address it today or at a later time. We'll make sure that we are noting them for the record.
You don't need to.
Hi, City Council. Debbie Ross. I live up on Carter, 297 West Carter. My family can be one of those who say I've been here 40 years, but still it's nothing compared to many residents. I didn't come in quite as prepared as the last speaker. She was quite knowledgeable in some of the facts she shared. I'm coming from the perspective of being a resident and neighbor of the monastery for many years. And for many years, they were very friendly and welcoming to us. The gates were open and many of us walked up there with our dogs and enjoyed the open space. Then the monastery put up fences and closed us out. Now the monastery is saying, remember, we're these friendly people. Well, I have to say that I can appreciate that they are in a financial position where they need to create some income, but not to our expense. Not one thing of the presentation that I reviewed on today's plans fits the theme and flavor and aesthetics of Sierra Madre. An architectural style of home is not what Sierra Madre is. And Sierra Madre is eclectic in its style. It's got great diversity in socioeconomic citizens who live here, residents who live here. The monastery project done by these developers is cookie cutter. Every house is the same size. I don't care if there are 4 different styles, they're all the same. It's ordinary. If they're after making a lot of money, then this is the way for them to go. But if the residents want to support something that would be useful for the city, or if the monastery wanted to do something that could benefit their organization, I think it should stay institutional, to be a care facility like Kensington, but 1 story, and it would have a very small impact on the city, and they could use it for their congregation that might need housing in the future. I can't design it for them. I know they need to raise income, but I would really appreciate the city council to reflect on, will this really enhance Sierra Madre? Or are we just accommodating their financial economic needs? Thank you.
Thank you.
David Gordon, Fairview Avenue, very close to the development now known as the Meadows at Bailey Canyon. No doubt the whole house was called Monroe or something like that. The architecture that has been laid out is disgraceful. This is cookie cutter architecture, better than average, but it's the same old cookie culture. That is to say, oh, when you look around, you hire some guy, walks around, takes photographs of Sierra Madre, and comes out and says, oh, well, there are lots of different styles in Sierra Madre, so let's have a development with lots of different styles. Now, a style of architecture is different from architecture. The picture that they showed of the Craftsman Style has elements that are Craftsman, but it's kind of mock Craftsman. It's not a design that is emanated from somebody who's deep in that kind of architecture. The site is remarkable, with the retreat building and behind it, San Gabriel. It's one of the most extraordinary undeveloped sites in and around Los Angeles. Sierra Madre deserves something of tremendous architectural quality. Adele Chang runs an extremely successful firm, but There are architects in Los Angeles that have an international reputation of doing residential architecture of the highest kind. If one has to have this development, and I hope we do have the development, that is what Sierra Madre deserves. Something that is priced, superb, extraordinary, stands out, takes advantage of the space, not something which is with the Craftsman style or the modernist style. Something that's authentic. When you walk around Sierra Madre, you see houses that were built of their time, and of their time they were authentic. People who had been doing the Craftsman architecture here didn't say, oh, well, let's have a Tudor house and let's have a plantation style house, because I've seen them with other roads around Sierra Madre. So let's have one of those. It makes for variety. That's not how you do great architecture. The great architecture movement of Los Angeles is California modernism. And Neutra and Schindler, people who did houses that are extraordinary, take advantage of light and space and air. And that's not what you're seeing on these disgusting drawings produced by people who are excellent commercial architects. That is to say, they do what their clients want. The New Urban West is a very clever company with wonderful public relations to get what their clients want. They're nice people, they're honorable people, they're competent people, they do to an extent listen. But the end result is something we do not want in Sierra Madre.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Shirley Moore. I don't need to repeat everything a lot of the other people have said before me that I agree with, except for the person who said they thought 42 houses was a great idea for Sierra Madre. The green space in front of the retreat center. I have such a hard time reconciling the vision of 42 houses smashed into that space. And when you look at the rendering, it is a miserable tract house project. They are just smashed in there. I don't see any benefit for Sierra Madre, a 3.5 acre park in exchange for destroying that green space is not enough. I did hear the speaker for the architect firm say that they could pre-purchase water from the Metropolitan Water District. That's water that they pre-purchase. They're taking that away from us. So they are still impacting Sierra Madre's resources, our water resources with those homes. You can't just wish that away. This is gonna make a huge impact on this community with traffic. I can't imagine living over there. We just recently had a meeting with our chief, with Chris Mino, and a couple other folks, Gabe, Jim, in the canyon last week, regarding the speeding problem we're having in the canyon, where speed limit's 15 miles an hour, most people drive 20 and above. And we have one in particular who's a terrible offender. And we don't know what to do about this. And this is just the canyon, and most of this is just our regular traffic, but because we have so many people walking up and down our streets now because of the quarantine, it's a very dangerous situation. I can't imagine living anywhere near Sunnyside and having 400 trips going down that street every day. Especially because I do know that that street is heavily trafficked, because I used to use the monastery property myself and walk up there. I think this is a terrible idea for Sierra Madre, and I am concerned by some of the comments that some of you folks made, and I understand you need to appear unbiased, but it appears, as one of the other speakers said, that this is a done deal, that you've already approved it. And I'm really concerned about what this is going to do to this town. I've been here almost 30 years, and this is just as bad as the proposed development on One Carter, where you have the issue of fire, flood, earthquake in the hillside areas, in town as well, but in the hillside areas in particular. And you're going to consider a 42 house development on the hillside. It's unbelievable.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Hi, I'm Yvette Ben Corazon, 673 Brookside Lane, Sierra Madre, business owner and homeowner in this town for 23 years. I love this town. I just recently purchased another house in this town, sold my other house. We've had a lot of water issues here, as you all know. I'm very concerned. I too very much used the monastery, loved it, would walk up there. I have missed that since COVID. Since I live in the canyon, yes, we had a meeting that I attended, and it's very concerning to me, the amount of traffic that's gonna happen. Then not to mention just, I was thinking about Amazon deliveries, FedEx deliveries. I mean, the nightmare of that street, I just can't even imagine, on top of the environmental impact. And we have prided ourselves in the city as being a city that was eclectic and embracing, and we never had real huge, like a Jack in the Box or McDonald's or anything like that. And we're bringing in these cookie cutter homes that don't fit our aesthetics here. And I really plead to you to really see it within your heart and really look at what the impact will be on our city. You know, we value this city. I know a lot of you. You helped me one day when I was walking too much and my blood sugar went low, and you gave me a banana. You know, I love my neighbors. I love my clients in this town. Please see it in your heart to really fully consider this and think about your living situation as well. It will impact you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And I do remember that banana.
Thank you.
Mr. Hood.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Gary Hood's the name, live on North Baldwin. Thank you for the opportunity to allow the community to come forward and speak. One of the things that I heard was that the Planning Commission was going to be reviewing these designs. Is that true or not? The other question is, it come forward to the planning council to revisit the Planning Commission's position on design review. I think it's very important to the community. The Planning Commission is representing the people. We feel like as the people, the Planning Commission, the only people that can speak in our behalf because they do live in the community. So if it's not on the agenda, future agenda, can we put that on the agenda to review the Planning Commission's present position versus what they used to do, the function they used to do? And a subject that's close to my heart. If we do anything up there on the monastery property, 42 homes, is it possible to please put one more firefighter on the engine company so we'll have 2 firefighters? Definitely is safer for the community, and with the added responsibility that the fire department has, and if the property is built up there, they're definitely going to need more assistance. Throughout the United States, community emergency response teams, CERT, have been developed over the years to help the community. And I assure you, when we have a big earthquake here, the fire department and the community is going to need all the help they can get. So please, let's put one more firefighter on the engine company to give us 2. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we have our next speaker come to the podium, do we have any other speakers that are wishing to speak on this item? Okay, I see one other. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karina Bear. I live in 847 Canyon Crest. I love this town. I don't normally speak in public, but I really, really love this town. I'm very concerned about the project, 42 houses. This is literally sets a terrible precedent. You know, once this is greenlit, all the other projects that any other developer are how do we even stop the flow? I think it's really concerning, especially the way it's going forward so quickly. And 42 homes is completely unreasonable there. What about the wildlife? What about the fires? What about the water that everyone's already said? If we have to put something on that property, and I don't know why we do, I don't know why it's our responsibility to you know, build, to you know, have the monastery sell it, but you know, to allow them to zone it to sell it. But why do we need to make it residential at all? Couldn't we put something like a beautiful retreat, a commercial retreat, something like an Ojai Valley Inn and Spa there, a small scale where people come and, you know, enjoy the wildlife, enjoy the beauty in this beautiful space. The structure there is already beautiful. This would, you know, create revenue for the city. It would, you know, when I go to Ojai or other places like that, we go into town, we go to the restaurants, we shop in the shops. So, and again, on a small scale, that's far better than something like 42 homes jammed into a tiny space like that. So I believe there are other ways to use that space if it must be built on. Obviously, I would prefer that it just be back to the way it was, you know, when I first lived here, where it was open to the public, we all enjoyed it, the wildlife, the people, everyone. But if we have to put something, I believe there are better uses for it than 42 homes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And, just to take a poll out here, is this the last speaker we have on this item? Looks like, please come to the podium. Oh, we have another. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Tricia Cersei, and I live at 734 Fairview Avenue. I lived here for over 20 years and love the city very much. And I went to the developers meeting on Thursday. On Friday, I posted something on an app called Nextdoor. Some of you may be familiar with it. And up until today, there have been over 300 comments in this short period of time. So there's tremendous interest in the community. And my one big concern is that there's not going to be enough time because of the pandemic for this council to hear the community's concern, that there won't be enough outreach available, that they, not just to the developer, because the developer is going to be, as they should, doing their job and promoting the development. And this council is, the job is to also hear the citizens and to consider other alternatives. And I don't know what the other alternatives are. And I think it would be helpful for the people to know what the other options might be. Someone mentioned assisted living. That sounds like an option that would be worth investigating, right? What is the impact? The developer gave us some numbers. I don't know what those numbers came from. I think it would be helpful to see the reports that they based these numbers on. That goes to say for traffic. What is that report? Because at one of the meetings, some of the things that came up in this Nextdoor forum is that for traffic, the 400 cars just relates to the residences, not deliveries, housekeepers, gardeners, monastery retreatants, users of the park. So we need to have an idea of what the real traffic impact is going to be, and how it's going to impact Sunnyside, and how it's going to impact Carter for ingress and egress. Fire is an issue. The net zero water impact, I'm not sure how that's going to work. They said buying water, how does that work? And also the idea of retrofitting existing homes. Is that going to be through regulation? It's going to be a requirement of residents of older homes. And I don't think that that's going to be a significant impact really. And then the other question is about the park maintenance. It says in the MOU that it's going to be paid for in perpetuity, but and the MOU also says that's under the city's obligations. So the city's going to be paying for the parking and for the park and for the Bailey Canyon business. At least that's according to the MOU. So those are some of the specifics, but I also would just direct this council's attention to the Nextdoor app thread, or that's also, I mean, I was just really shocked at how effective that was in getting people to voice concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for comments. Okay, since I don't see, I know we have one other speaker, but I want to make sure that we don't have any others because we will be closing the presentation after the last speaker. Please.
Hi. I have sent various emails proposing that that space be used for something like a native plant botanic garden instead of housing. And I think that might bypass a lot of the community members' concerns.
Sorry, can you please speak into the mic and also state your name?
Okay, my name is Christopher Wheelock, and I've proposed multiple times that space be used for a native plant botanic garden instead of housing. And I think doing so might bypass a lot of the community member concerns. And I've also created a petition in the housing project, and I'm going to read off the link here so you can maybe sign and share it if you want. It's HTTPS. It's just www.petition-congress.com/CTAS/N-housing-project-at-Monterey-Dolorosa. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other comments, thank you everyone for taking the time to come out tonight. Now you get to go back and get yourself warm unless you want to stay for the rest of our meeting. We will have another opportunity for the public to speak during an official city council meeting, whether it's a scheduled one or a special meeting. So we'll make sure that notification is included in all of our communications out to the community. And before we end, I just want to make sure, Mr. City Manager, were there any immediate questions that you wanted to answer, or are we going to go ahead and collect that and address it at a later time?
Mayor, we've written down all the questions. We'll send those to the property owner and to Urban West and answer the ones that are appropriate for the city. The majority of the questions will be answered after the draft EIR is released, and the city is required to provide answers to all of those.
Great, thank you so much.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering if there were email comments that we wanted to read into the record. Thank you. I was just going to say that.
Thank you. City Clerk?
Yes, ma'am. There were three comments received via email. The first one received from Mary Skousen Radford at 775 Woodland Drive in Sierra Madre reads of opposition to the development of the monastery by New Urban West on the proposed project at 700 North Sunnyside Avenue. I'm opposed to this project primarily because of the increased fire risk to the community and fire defense obligation that it imposes on the city of Sierra Madre. The proposed project is located in a high fire risk area. As the climate changes and the wildland urban interface growth continues, wildfires become an increasing problem for fire departments in California and our city especially. The increase in this fire danger is known as it is always changing, and the fire code for new construction can't keep up with these unforeseen changes. Current code is not sufficient to protect a new neighborhood in a high fire risk area. As the Bobcat fire demonstrated, we cannot rely on the fire personnel of other cities nor of CAL FIRE during times of widespread fire. In addition, depending on these entities comes with the consequences during times of wildfire. How can our Sierra Madre fire service professionals prepare a new community for the inevitable fire that is to come? Is our current fire department sufficient to protect our current housing? Will it be sufficient to protect the new proposed housing in addition to our current housing? As a Sierra Madre Canyon resident for the last 30 years, I am keenly aware of the protocols of the fire safety during a wildfire. The evacuations, the death trap status of communities with only one exiting street, as is the proposed development. Currently, Sierra Madre already contains several historic communities in high fire risk zones. Do we want to increase the risk of current historic communities by building brand new residences in high fire risk zones that will draw away from our limited resources. The increase of high-priced homes in the high fire risk area would require more Sierra Madre Fire Department personnel. Sierra Madre Fire Department currently is comprised of 16 full-time personnel, 1 chief, 3 fire captains, 3 engineers, and 9 firefighter paramedics. It would be negligence to approve of a proposal by the New Urban West without also planning on either expanding our Sierra Madre Fire Department or requiring the proposal to provide its own permanent fire protection plan. According to fire safety, the defensible space includes not only the home, but everything within a 100-foot radius. Radiant heat can ignite a home from up to 100 feet away, and merely combustible material can serve as a conduit for flames to reach a home. Currently, on the Sierra Madre Fire Department website, the following is only part of the legal obligation of residents. How can we ensure that these obligations will be abided? Brush clearance requirements for homes in the high fire hazard area include the first 30 feet around any structure shall be free of native and hazardous vegetation. The next 70 feet of ground cover shall be a height of no greater than 18 inches except trees. Native shrubs within 100 feet of any structure shall be trimmed 2 feet above the ground with no closer than 18 feet to other vegetation or structures. Maintain trees within 100 feet of any building or structure and within 10 feet from any roadway free of dead foliage, and maintain branches and foliage 3 feet off the ground. Remove any portion of a tree which extends within 10 feet of an outlet of a chimney. Keep all shrubs and other growing vegetation adjacent to or overhanging any building free of dead limbs, branches, or other combustible matter.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. And for those of you that are no longer attending the meeting, if you can please keep your voice down, we still need to conduct the rest of our meeting. That'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
There are 2 other emails, Madam Mayor. The second email is received from Otessa Moshfegh of 1736 Old Grove Road in Pasadena, California, 91107. The email reads, to the Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Sierra Madre City Council members. Thank you for hearing this public comment today. As a resident in the community, I am strongly opposed to any proposal of construction at 700 North Sunnyside Avenue. This housing project will hurt us all, increase traffic, noise, pollution, decreased home values, loss of privacy, damage to ecosystem. New Urban West Inc. has absolutely no interest in the community. This is a company that openly exploits open spaces for nothing more than their private financial interests. Why should we be sacrificing our standard of living and well-being so that a corporation in Santa Monica can profit? Please preserve the beauty and value of Sierra Madre by protecting that sacred space and saying no. And the third email received on this item is from Luke Goebel. And that email reads, hi all, I write as a concerned member of the community and homeowner. This proposed 700 Sunnyside housing project is a terrible idea. That's such a gorgeous space and land with nature and peace and quiet and architectural integrity surrounding. Trashing Sierra Madre with the large housing development project would be a lasting horror to this beautiful landscape and community. Please do not trash our open spaces in our community for a quick buck. The value of this town will continue to pay dividends if you protect it long term. The quick buck will end up costing our community in the long run. Be wise. That concludes the 3 emails received by city staff, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to action items in the consent calendar. Madam City Clerk, I think we'll give the mic back to you.
There are 3 consent items. Consent item A is consideration of resolution 21-16 approving certain demands. It is recommended that the city council approve payment of city warrants in the aggregate amount of $82,010.44. Sierra Madre Library warrants in the aggregate amount of $84.35. And payroll transfer in the aggregate amount of $377,319.66 for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2021. Item B is the annual housing element progress report. It is recommended that the city council receive and file the annual progress report. Consent item C is consideration of resolution 2113 to approve joining the Employment Risk Management Authority, IRMA, JPA, for employment practices liability coverage. It is recommended that the City Council approve Resolution 2113, authorizing participation in the Employment Risk Management Authority, IRMA. That concludes my presentation, Madam City Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on item letter A in the consent calendar? Questions on item B, the annual housing element progress report? And lastly, on item C, resolution 21-13, any questions? Okay, seeing none, do we have any public comment on items on the consent calendar? That's just a mic fix. Okay. With that, I'll bring it back to council for discussion and or motion to.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Before, Madam Mayor, I have a comment before.
Sure, Councilmember Parkhurst.
So I just wanted on item A, I'm sad to see that Waterworks didn't pay the invoice for the pump repair they incurred while operating the service, the pool. I'm glad to see that the city paid for the invoice, even though we're not legally obligated to. So I just wanted to note that.
Thank you. So we have a first from Councilmember Creeps. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Seeing no nays or abstentions, the motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we go to public hearing. Director Gonzalez for adoption of ordinance 1439.
Yes, we can go ahead and put the PowerPoint presentation up. And if you cannot locate the presentation, I can go ahead and just give you an oral presentation if you'd like to see. You do have copies, and you have copies available for anybody in the audience. Basically, what I wanted to do is give you a brief background of how this came about. So back in 1986, California passed a state law requiring local governments to inventory buildings in their cities, establish a risk reduction program, and report those results to the state. And in 1989, the City Council conducted such study, inventory 63 buildings that did not meet seismic safety standards. In 1990, the city adopted an ordinance 1059 creating chapter 15.444 earthquake hazard reduction in existing buildings in response to that. So a more recent survey was conducted in 2019 by Commissioner Bob Spears and structural engineer Rob Spears on a voluntary basis. And they evaluated each of the 63 buildings, and they identified 24 remaining buildings that required further investigation. And upon further research of city records and on-site inspections by the city building official, it was determined that out of those 24 buildings, 9 appear not to meet seismic safety standards and required further investigation. So I'm going to slide 5 now. So basically, I'm just going to point out task number 5. This is where we are in this process. So if City Council considers adoption of this ordinance, staff will then send registered letters to property owners on implementation of the new ordinance and specific compliance tasks. And that would continue on with accelerated plan check of plans that would be submitted to the city, as well as issuance of building permits on a priority basis. And then a certificate of compliance would be issued both to the property owner as well as the Los Angeles County Assessor's Office and the State Seismic Safety Commission. slide. You can stay there. So essentially, in terms of highlights of the ordinance, there's a number of new definitions that we established, and that more importantly, I wanted to highlight the content of the order. There is a sample letter provided in the council packet, which is in attachment 3, which highlights that order. But more importantly, which was the compliance timeline that you had up on the monitor earlier. This is an order that was initiated by the Van City Council in 2020 and which came up with these specific timeframes. So the time frame here is 180 days from the date of the order. The property owner will be required to submit an engineering report to retrofit or to a plan to demolish. Within 270 days from the date of the order, the property owner would be required to obtain permits to perform the retrofit or demolition, and within 360 days to complete construction and obtain a certificate of compliance. Now, the order or the ordinance also grants the discretion to the director to grant time extensions. These time extensions would be to accommodate any planning entitlements that would need to be acquired, and also any delays in terms of hardships such as a pandemic or other construction delays. So there are abilities to extend these deadlines by the director. Additional highlights of the ordinance on the next slide is basically we would be required to establish certain findings, right? We have 2 findings that are included in the ordinance. And one of them is specific to historic landmarks. So currently, under state law, designated historic landmarks do not fall under the guise of this ordinance. They fall under the California Historic Building Code. But knowing that, what we also wanted to do, the Planning Commission made a point to ensure that no historic landmark designation shall occur prior to a retrofit plan. We are also going to require a public notice that would be placed on the building in the form of a sign stating that the building is potentially unsafe to either occupy or be around in the event of an earthquake. That's another requirement. The state requirement is to post that sign. And then the final slide, basically there are penalties for non-compliance. If a property owner is found to be non-compliant, the city could, if this building was determined to be unsafe for occupancy, could demolish the building and request repayment by that property owner, plus any administrative fees. And also it could impose a lien on the property as well. The final slide, that's 2 more slides. So the alternatives before the council this evening is to approve ordinance 1439 as presented, or you can approve it with modifications or continue the matter. For further discussion or direction both to the Planning Commission as well as staff. Staff is recommending that the City Council introduce, waive reading in full, and authorize reading by title only in ordinance 1439, which repeals in its entirety chapter 15.44 and replaces that chapter with a new chapter 15.44, earthquake hazard reduction in existing and reinforced masonry buildings, and risk reduction schedule, title 15, building and construction of the City of Madre Municipal Code. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to questions like that.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez, for the presentation, and thank you to both our Spears man. I want to call them Spears brothers, but I know they're not brothers. But thank you so much. I know that we are very fortunate to have, I know Bob is here, I don't know if Rod is here, but to have both of you that have this skill set and this expertise, and to be able to volunteer your time, we're extremely thankful. So thank you. The question I have before I ask my fellow council members if they have any others, Director Gonzalez, what's the basis for the timeline? I'm trying to understand what the timeline, are there any requirements or regulations, or is it based on past experience that we've had in other projects and requirements?
So the timeline was established by looking at what other cities have done. And this is a common timeline. Actually, we initially proposed a longer timeline. The city council at that time decided to shorten the schedule up a little bit.
Was it city council or planning commission? Okay. Thank you.
Also, just one other note, when this was last instituted back in 1990, the time frame for compliance was 3 years.
And just for clarification, was it a city council within the last 6 years that decided to shorten the timeline?
It was the council in 2020. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any questions from council?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yeah, I know this is questions and not discussion, but this could impact some of the businesses here in town. So that this concerns me. So these questions are based on that. So, on one hand, it would make sense to do some of this retrofitting when things are slow and a lot of these businesses aren't getting the normal flow that they would. But on the other hand, they've been impacted so much over this last year. So that concerns me. So my question is, do we have the ability to write in the ordinance something such as when a new tenant comes in or upon sale of the property, that this retrofitting must be done? Just looking at the businesses, and in spirit of that, what kind of disruption would it be in the building as far as the retrofit?
So some of the buildings, some of the one-story buildings are actually quite small. So speaking to our city building official, he's saying that some of the retrofit would be fairly minimal and not that disruptive. If we have perhaps a two-story building or a building that needs a lot more work, it could be a little bit, take more time to retrofit that building, have some impact to tenants that occupy that space.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. And if there is a large disruption, I mean, it would be up to the landlord to make sure there's some kind of remedy for the tenant. I mean, because they have a business going on. So I don't know procedurally how this can work because there are existing businesses in there. And if you own a business, your presumption is that you continue to work. So how does this work procedurally with a landlord-tenant type of relationship?
Well, I think, yes, it's going to be a challenge. We all recognize that. We also have to recognize that this ordinance, the first ordinance, and the requirement to do so was passed in 1990. And so property owners have known that their buildings have not been in compliance for many, many years. In this case, if the city council wanted to write in language or ask staff to come back with additional language to provide that opportunity that only when a building is vacated will it be considered to be retrofit. I know the planning commission, and you might hear from one this evening, they have concerns about that, but they also recognize that there are buildings in town that do not necessarily meet life safety standards and are could be a detriment to the occupants of that building.
Obviously safety is very important. So I don't know if this is a good time to hear from them because it's, it goes to my question. So if somebody would like to speak to that other than Director Gonzalez.
Let's go ahead and see if there are any other questions, and but understood that this does relate to the safety in the questions. But I just want to make sure there are any other questions from, oh, look at Councilmember Parker's got his beanie on. and gloves. Okay. Councilmember Creeps.
Yes, two questions, please. One is, I know that you highlighted, and I saw in the proposed ordinance, the ability for the director to exercise discretion to push these deadlines out based on, a variety of factors, including sort of the existence of disruption such as the pandemic. I guess my question relating to that is, do we expect that to be, somewhat universally given that we are in one of those situations? And if that was the case, would it not make sense then to just sort of build in less discretion and more objective timelines based on, some measure of the end of the current situation? That's question one. Why don't you go ahead and address that, and then I'll ask my second question.
So the planning commission did consider establishing priority levels in terms of the status of buildings. Some might have higher risk than others, maybe a low, medium, high risk. We decided to remove that clause from our ordinance and proceed with what we are presenting today. Primarily because most of the buildings in the city have all the same risk level. We were at a medium risk. I also wanted to point out that not all my buildings may require extensive retrofit. There are some property owners that are saying, or even former property owners that are saying that the city evaluated these back in 1990, and that there were buildings were x-rayed and found to have reinforcements. So there could be at least 2 or 3 more cases similar to that where myself and the building official did a site visit, talked to the occupants and property owners of the building, and they showed us evidence, and we did remove those. But there are some that we could not make that determination, and the easiest way would be to have a section of that building x-rayed to see if we can find evidence of retrofit. So in terms of the early on investigation, these are some of the things that we would look at. So it's not going to be necessarily very disruptive in the beginning. We're looking at a year or more before actual construction might be taking place. So it's basically asking a property owner to obtain a structural engineer to see if they can make a determination as to how this building was constructed and if it is properly reinforced. So there's different methods of doing that. And if we go to the next phase, and yes, it's not reinforced, then what is the degree of that reinforcement? What would make that building comply? So it's multi-part phase, and it will take some time. So I'm still assuming that even our timeline within a 1-year period will be extended.
Councilmember Greaves, another way that you might, by looking around. And another consideration for council, if they were considering pushing back this timeline in light of COVID, the timeline, the 180 days doesn't kick in until the notice is issued to the property owner. Now, the city council could determine when that notice is issued. It could either set a date or it could tie it to a certain event. So like, let's say, for example, tying it to the city council's declaration at the end of the emergency, for example. So that's just another consideration for council.
Thank you. And then my other question was around the penalties, and I appreciate that you highlighted that in the presentation, and I wondered whether that was consistent with the penalties that have been in the ordinance already and consistent with other municipalities that have enacted this. I wonder if there's alternatives. I worry that it would be very difficult for the city to determine to demolish a building if it wasn't in compliance. And I wonder if there is a penalty structure that would, incentivize compliance without, sort of being that drastic.
Well, I used to work for the city of Pasadena, and we had a very similar situation to this, where we had a number of buildings that were not compliant. That went on for many years.
And at one point, the city decided to impose strong restrictions. So buildings were red tagged, and some of them had residents living above. They were evicted, and the buildings sat vacant until we received compliance. They didn't have to demolish any building. They were eventually retrofitted. But certainly, there's a lot of different approaches that cities do take in terms of trying to achieve compliance. In this case, I thought it was fairly accommodating and without having that heavy of a hand. I don't really see any building that would be demolished in terms of this order. I think our buildings are not that large. They're not multi-level buildings, or they would pose a greater hardship. They're smaller, and they're probably able to be addressed and remediated in a much simpler way than we're imagining.
Councilor Cruz, if I could add on to that. The city has discretion to enforce its zoning code in a number of ways. It can take criminal action, it can file a civil action, but there are also administrative remedies that the city has. Now, one administrative remedy, as pointed out by Director Gonzalez, is going through the public nuisance process and forcing a demolition. Another method we have is administrative citation. So we can always begin by citing people for the violation of the code and having a graduated citation process. And if they don't pay any of their citations, then maybe we could move to pursuing a public nuisance and ultimately demolition. So it's gradual.
And that's already in the code that would provide for that. We wouldn't have to provide for that specifically here.
No, that remedy is currently in the code.
All right, so we've covered the stick. Is there anything in the way of a carrot? Are there funding sources for this? Not necessarily through the city, but at the state level or other government level to provide for this? I mean, I know it's been enforced for a long time, so I hesitate to ask if there's still funds, but it seems like this would be something that the public would have interest in helping businesses fund.
Staff did look in to see if there were other grants or funding opportunities. We did not find any. The ordinance back in the 1990 did have CDBG grants that were available. The city did participate in a CDBG grant of $30,000 at that time. But since this has been going on for quite some time, I didn't find any grants available. The only ones that I did find for retrofit buildings is for soft first-story buildings, which will be another ordinance that we will be looking at in the next phase of this effort.
That's a follow-up. I just want to be clear about this. The affected properties we're talking about, how long have the property owners been aware of these problems?
They were notified when the ordinance went into effect in 1990.
Okay, 1990.
I have two questions. So, Director Gonzalez, can you confirm they were notified back in 1990? Is that correct?
Yes, and there was an extensive program to get compliance at that time.
And do you have an idea of costs and kind of, I know some of these things, it's hard because it's building and we're all familiar with that. But the cost to determine the problem and cost to fix it, is there any way you can give us some idea of ballpark range, a best case, worst case scenario, anything like that that can help us think through this?
I tried to get a similar response from our building official. It was also difficult to come up with a range, and it depends on the building itself. There's a specific height to width ratio that they look at to determine how much movement occurs in a building, in what direction the earthquake might be. He couldn't give me an exact or a general range of what that retrofit might be.
Okay, it looks like, so going back to Councilmember Garcia's question. I know what commissioners are here. I think I see Commissioner Spears. Is that a question you'd like to address him, or are there any other commissioners that are here? So the question you had was, if you can repeat that again, please.
If I can remember it. No, I think it had to do with,
Safety issue.
safety. This is way outside my expertise, right? So we have to rely on people that are experts in the field. So I wanted to hear, not just from the director, but maybe from Commissioner Spears or something else that has some input on that. Not to put you on the spot, Bob.
Ready for public comment?
Please. Well, well, we're hoping to address you as a commissioner, but please come to the podium and as the one of our voluntary inspectors, evaluators, or assessors.
So, Madam Mayor, council members, I'm Bob Spears. I live at 80 West Grandview, and I want to begin my little presentation by thanking Rod Spears, structural engineer, who contributed his valuable expertise in the survey of the buildings that led us to this moment. Both Rod and Joan do a lot for our community. They don't get the credit that they richly deserve. So in 1986, the state of California passed a law recognizing that the older unreinforced masonry buildings were a serious risk to students and citizens during an earthquake. These URM structures could totally fail, or more often, the parapet could fall and injure people trying to flee the building during an earthquake. These weakened structures would then still provide serious hazard to the first responders who are in there searching for victims in aftershock. So this is a safety issue. Then in 1990, the city of Sierra Madre reported that there were 63 of these URM buildings in our town, mostly in our downtown area. Then also 31 years ago, the city passed an ordinance to reduce the hazard these buildings pose to the citizens. Now, all this time later, the city still has 24 of these potentially hazardous buildings that remain unmodified. Please be aware that the ordinance that you have before you today will only move Sierra Madre to comply with a 30-year-old state law. While it will improve the relative safety of these unreinforced structures, it will in no way make them safe, just less hazardous. And please follow through on this. I mean, these people have had 30 years to comply. If you want to worry about the businesses, some of them are empty right now. Now's the perfect time to go in and retrofit a building because there's nobody in there. But they've had 30 years to comply. And they posed a risk to the community for the last 30 years. So let's catch up with the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Mr. Spears, for your help and work on this issue. Is Mr. Rod Spears here also?
I don't see him.
Okay. Okay, so are there any public comments on this item? Please come to the podium and if you can state your name, please.
Yes, absolutely. My name is Lance Williams. I'm actually representing a property owner on Baldwin.
Can you speak closer to the mic also?
Yes, Lance Williams. I'm representing my mother is a property owner on Baldwin Avenue, one of these affected properties. We actually only purchased the property about 5 years ago. So we were unaware of this. This did not, for some reason, show up in due diligence. So I appreciate the ordinance and the information's been here for years. I don't know how it was missed. But I will only become aware of this in the last 10 days when we received a letter regarding this ordinance. I completely understand safety issues. However, pandemic has put us in a very awkward position. It's a mixed-use building. A couple of the tenants, one tenant has been forced to close for the pandemic. Another tenant completely closed and left. So my mother actually relies on this for income. This is her business. Is really short right now. And this kind of structural improvement, we actually have gone through this in another building a while back, and the costs were over $150,000 to fix the building. This is a much smaller building, so I'm hoping it's a lot less. It's not something we want to necessarily avoid. We actually made an appointment for a structural engineer to already come out once receiving this letter. So we're in the process of looking into it. but the timelines really concern me. We just don't have the money to do this right now. And if we were at least given a little more opportunity to extend the timelines, make sure, of course, that everything is safe, but extend the timelines of compliance, I think that would be very helpful for us. A lot of times the landlords are made out to be, I don't know, somehow able to cope with this stuff, or the bad guys in the situation. This is actually the business. I mean, this is my mother's business. She's a landlord. And it's something she relies on, and she's drastically affected by this pandemic. We putting up a sign that says this is an unsafe building, that basically would, kill any source of or chance of having the empty space filled. So we're really in a bad position here. The building has been here for a long time. It's withstood several earthquakes in the past. We haven't seen any damage as far as we can tell on previous inspections. But like I said, we have already contacted a structural engineer to come out. We're just hoping that you'll consider extending the timeframes for this so that we can adequately try and prepare for the costs. I appreciate your consideration on this. Thank you.
And so just thank you for your comment. As a follow-up question to your comment is what to you is a reasonable amount of time of extension?
That's a good question. I mean, we have almost a full year loss of income on half the property right now. I would say probably an extra 6 months to a year beyond what's listed on what I've seen today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anyone else here for public comment on this item?
My name is Henny Sami. I'm owner of the building of 147 West Sierra Madre. Right now is the dental office building. I have a couple of concerns. One,
Sorry, sir, can you speak closer to the mic so we can hear you, please?
let's close or close?
Closer.
Okay, close. I was told in the past that that building went through 2 significant earthquakes and never was any damage on the building. So I'm wondering if that building needs any major retrofitting. The other comment is that we bought that building in 1999. It was a real estate agency, and we did a significant change to transform that into a building. And absolutely no one told us ever that we need to retrofit the building. 3 years ago, another change was done to convert that into a dental office building. Also opening the walls for piping, water and electricity. And no one told us we needed also to do a retrofit. So one question is, do we need to do a retrofitting? And if we really need, it's disappointing that we did, at the time we did changes twice, no one told us when we have the permits that we needed to do a retrofit.
Thank you. And sir, I imagine you did receive a notification, correct?
We did, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's a one-story building, 1 floor building, and it's 2,000 square feet.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question, follow-up to the, over here?
I think we're gonna go through this while I gotta find where people are. Councilmember Parker.
So both of the business owners or the building owners said that they didn't know about this when they purchased the building. And so I guess this is to Director Gonzalez. How would, to Commissioner Spear's point, people should have known about this. This has been around for 30 years, but people bought them recently. How is it that, where is there the breakdown in the system that this isn't part of any of the due diligence or part of any of the, when anyone buys a building or buys a residence, a stack of paperwork can be measured in inches. So why is this not part of that?
those issues should have been discovered in a title report if that information was recorded with the Seismic Safety Commission that they were a report. So that's part of the issue. Our records are also don't show whether they are retrofitted or not. Some buildings we did, that's why we were able to tear down a number of buildings that were retrofitted. But in many cases, it should have been recorded on the deed and should be discovered in the title report. Our list, now what we're going to do is, now that we've updated the URM list of buildings in town, we will be able to keep track of that data. So if people commit to due diligence prior to purchasing, we certainly have an accessible list that we can access now.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll bring it back to council for discussion. And I'd be happy to start. I know that hearing that this has been in place for 30 years, owners have been notified, and the need for safety to ensure it. With that being said, I am concerned about the timeline, and I'm actually okay with the one-year timeline, and maybe as Attorney Garosian had shared, is that maybe we could look at when that timeline starts with the notification. I'm open to hear if other folks are in agreement with me as to when that could be, but given the ordinance itself, I'm okay moving forward. Again, I understand the importance of it. And I also understand the burden that it has on the owners, but knowing that, again, it's a safety issue for not only themselves, but also for residents and those visiting, I think it's important that we enforce it, so.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, the city clerk's mic is up, but we do have one email public comment I'd like to read, if that's
Please.
okay. Hello, Honorable City Council of Sierra Madre. My name is Glenn Milburn, and I represent Y Green Energy Fund, the leading property assessed clean energy financing company in the state. We provide financing for energy and water conservation, seismic and wildfire resiliency improvements for homes and businesses in over 215 communities in California. I'm speaking on behalf of discussion point 1 on your public hearing agenda related to regulations on retrofits for unreinforced masonry buildings in your city. The state of California enabled PACE financing to be set up and administered under one of two different
Can you
pieces.
speak closer to the mic?
Two different pieces of legislation which enable PACE programs in California. AB 811 2008 allows renewable energy sources and energy efficient upgrades to be financed through an assessment district. Additional legislation expanded projects eligible for financing to include water efficiency improvements, electrical vehicle charging stations, and seismic improvements. SB 555 in 2011 amended the Melrose Community Facilities Act to allow for the creation of community facility districts for the purpose of financing or refinancing the acquisition, installation, and improvement of energy efficiency, water conservation, renewable energy, seismic improvements, and electrical vehicle charging stations. Several pieces of legislation signed in 2016 and 2017 respectively were passed in recent years, significantly strengthen the disclosures and consumer protections applicable to private licensed program administrators of the PACE industry. In September 2018, SB 465 expanded PACE eligible measures to include fire hardening applicable to all PACE programs. As you discuss disaster preparedness with regard to public health crises, earthquakes, and fire danger, along with utility power shutoff plans which kill local economies, I want to stress to you that A, people must be secure in their homes and businesses as evacuation isn't wise or appealing at this time where congregating in large groups is still a major hazard and will be for the next several months for sure, assuming there isn't a second wave of the virus in the fall as predicted. B, protecting your small and medium-sized business sector. Our Main Street or downtown sector is critical in advance of power outages from earthquakes, storms, fires, PSP events. PACE can help with hardening measures and solar storage generator options to provide a level of immunity to unreliable power supply. 3, local governments like Sierra Madre need to protect their primary and recently threatened source of revenue via property and sales tax revenue. So having businesses remain open and undamaged from PSPS and natural disasters is critical. We strongly urge you to consider how PACE can be added to future agenda in order to provide solutions to help your local property owners and businesses address these regulations. Our programs enable constituents to gain access to needed capital to make these upgrades. I have attached information on how our programs help communities across the state, and we'll include the attachment in the record.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, were any of those financing products related directly to retrofitting?
Mayor, I'd have to review in depth.
Thank you. Okay, so bringing it back to discussion.
Madam Mayor. So I do want to thank both the Commissioner Spearses for their efforts in this. And I know that for Commissioner Boss Spears, this is something that's been a passion and a deep concern. And so, and I'm glad that we're down to, I thought it was 10, but I'm glad that we're down to 9 buildings for repair. So I think that's really good. I don't know a huge amount about PACE funding, but it seems to me that it's another loan, and so you're adding another potential debt burden. I don't know. Councilmember Garcia can correct that, the right language to that, but you're adding more debt to the property at a time when the buildings are vacant. And while I understand Commissioner Spears' point that this would be a great time to do it, there's also no revenue. Like these things could be expensive. That's part of the reason for my question. So I think, Madam Mayor, your comment about the timeline, I agree that I think the timeline is reasonable, and I think pegging it to something, for example, once the city lifts its state of emergency, makes sense. I think right now it is a safety issue. But I'm inclined to people don't have revenue, and we need to have this as a vibrant downtown. So it's a kind of a rock and a hard place, but I'm leaning towards starting the clock once we lift the state of emergency.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else want to comment? Any other discussion on Simon? Seeing none. So we're at a point where we can entertain a motion and
Madam Mayor, can I
yeah.
comment real quick?
Please, Mayor Pro Tem Bossi.
To the public who's been following our council meetings for the last 7 years, 6 years, they probably know that I'm loath at the property owners unless there's an absolutely compelling reason. And I think we found one here. I think Mr. Spears is exactly right. 30 years is long enough. I mean, maybe we have an earthquake next week or 2 months from now. Somebody dies in one of these buildings because we didn't decide to pull the trigger on this. So I think my conscience cannot be clear by extending this. I think the whole 1 year timeline is plenty. And if you're in business, you're in business. There are always problems, always potential problems with business. And so I have tremendous sympathy for the 2 parties that showed up tonight to talk about this. But we still have a responsibility here to make sure that the public is safe. And so I like the ordinance 1439 the way it is. I like what others say.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Bossi.
I know time for question is fast, but I do have one question for the city attorney. So the way that discretion for the director is built into this ordinance, I mean, how broad that discretion is. I know in some instances it's tied to certain things such as, if there are entitlements needed or things like that. But to the extent that, financial hardship is part of the calculus here, is the discretion provided by the ordinance broad enough to allow for reasonable consideration of that? Or is it something that the council would maybe perhaps direct the director in some way if there was a particular problem?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Cleaves. Yes, the discretion is broad enough. The Director Gonzalez can exercise his discretion to take into consideration economic hardship. Having said that, if the council would like to provide direction to staff as to how to exercise that discretion, the council can also do that.
Thank you.
Following up that piece of information, I'd like to add to what I just said. It would seem to me, my full faith and confidence in Director Gonzalez, and I'm perfectly fine with that interpretation. If that eventually helps the one or two parties here in question, sounds great.
Okay, so I would like to entertain a motion one way or the other, which.
I move that we support ordinance 1439.
Okay, do we have a second? I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Point of order. Is this just without the discretion as to the timing of the delivery of the notice?
It's the motion on the floor is to approve as is, given that the discretion lays with the director of planning.
I'm going to say nay.
And so that passes 3-2. Thank you. Okay. Next item on public hearing is public hearing to consider adoption of ordinance 1440. We have City Attorney Garagosian that will be presenting that.
Thank you. And once you get the presentation up. So the density bonus law, if you all remember, was amended last year. And despite our amendment, the state has amended it again. So this is a state mandate. That's why we're going through this process. We are mandated by the state to keep our density bonus ordinance up to date for the state statute preamps that we've written. And that's how we're making sure that it's updated. So for a density bonus, we should keep 4 things in mind, and I'll talk about them individually. When someone applies for a density bonus, they really get 4 things. They get the density bonus, they get incentives or concessions, they might get a waiver, and they get special parking standards. So I'll talk about all 4 of those in this presentation. So what is a density bonus? Who gets it? First, a developer must request a density bonus. They don't automatically get it. Once they request it, it has to be a housing development consisting of 5 or more residential units. This doesn't apply to any residential unit less than 4 units or less than 5. It has to be in a mixed use or residential zone. The developer has to agree to record a 55-year affordability covenant to construct a threshold number of affordable, senior, or qualifying housing. Or in the alternative, if they don't want to build the housing, they have to donate land for affordable housing. So there are minimum eligibility thresholds to qualify for a density bonus. This slide lays some of those out. I won't go into much detail. For number 3, it says at least 10% of units in a common interest development. That's just, it means condos generally, for those who are unaware, or any properties restricted by an HOA. Next slide. So the density bonus ordinance is tied to household income. So if you meet a certain percentage, if your project develops a certain number of units that are affordable to households of a certain income, then you can get a density bonus. In Los Angeles County, very low income or extremely low income is $33,800 for a family of 4. Very low is $56,300. Low is $90,000. Median is $77,000. The median income for a family of 4 is $77,300. And Los Angeles County, you're a moderate income household if you make $90,750. Next slide. So I apologize, the slide is kind of small, but it's a summary of what your density bonus looks like given the eligibility threshold. So let's just say, for example, that your project consists of 5% of units affordable to very low income households, then you get a 20% density bonus. And if you look at the last row, if your project consists of 44% of units affordable to moderate income households, then you get a 50% density bonus. So that's just how the density bonus process works. Next slide. Like I said earlier, if you qualify for a density bonus, you also qualify for something called an incentive or a concession. There are 3 types that result in identifiable and actual cost reductions. Second, it can be an approval of a mixed-use zoning in conjunction with the housing project if the inclusion of commercial, office, or industrial uses will reduce the cost of the housing project, and such non-residential uses are compatible with the housing project and existing and planned development in the area. And third, it could be other regulatory incentives or concessions. So really that's just, it leaves it to the city and to the developer to come up with creative solutions to make the project more affordable. Next slide. So the state law was changed to allow low income housing projects to receive, the threshold for low income housing projects was reduced, which allows those projects to more easily receive concessions and incentives. Next slide. Waivers are not something that an applicant would get automatically. The applicant has to prove that the waiver is necessary because without the waiver, they would be precluded from constructing the housing development. There is no maximum or minimum number of waivers. Like I said, you have to prove that they need each of those waivers, and if they can prove it, and there's a whole process for that, then the city might grant it. Next slide. Waivers only apply to objective development standards. So these are just some examples of development objective standards that may be waived if you qualify for a waiver. Next slide. Here's our last slide. If you are eligible for a density bonus, you are also eligible for special parking standards. The parking standards were recently amended by the state. And what you have in this slide is actually not. So what we have in this slide isn't the state standard. It's the Planning Commission's recommended standard. So what you have crossed out is the state standard, and what you have to the right of it is the Planning Commission recommended standard. Now, the Planning Commission recommended these standards because in many cases, the default parking standards in Sierra Madre actually require less parking than what the density bonus law requires. And so we have a chart in the staff report on page 3 that compares what Sierra Madre's code requires in terms of parking versus what the state requires versus what the Planning Commission requires. And so the Planning Commission's recommendation on page, as reflected on page 3, really achieves the goal that the density bonus law is trying to achieve, and that's to facilitate affordable housing. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, City Attorney Garagosian. Do we have any questions for him? Seeing none, I'd like to open this up to public comment. Mr. Carlson, you don't want to comment on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for discussion. I was surprised to see Planning Commission recommend more lenient parking standards, but given that we do need incentives for developers to come in, I think it's going back to the sticks and carrots. I think it's a nice carrot to offer. I'd be in support of this this room.
I don't really see any problems with it. Most of it's being driven by state law, right? So it's not by choice.
Yes.
I don't see huge issues with parks. But anywhere in town, we're actually doing a pretty good job of maintaining parking, so I think it is a nice, a nice concession that's in there.
Any other comments or discussion, Councilmember Creed or Councilmember Garcia? Okay, seeing none.
Yeah, I'm in support of not increasing our parking requirements just to match the state. So if we have some flexibility there, that's nice. If there's not much flexibility otherwise.
Do I have a motion to approve adoption of ordinance 1440, recommendation amendment to chapter 17.34 affordable housing of Title 7 zoning of Sierra Madre Municipal Code?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, this motion carries unanimously. Okay, and our last item, our discussion item is consideration of resolution 21-14, Assistant City Manager Hernandez. There. Good evening.
Before you today is the consideration of resolution.
Can you speak closer to the mic, please?
Before you today is the consideration of resolution 2114, adopting the memorandum of understanding between the city of Sierra Madre and the Sierra Madre Professional Firefighters Association, and resolution 2115, amending the classification plan and salary matrix. Upon adoption of resolution 2114, the amendments to the MOU for the Fire Association provides for a 2.5 salary adjustment retroactive to July 5th, 2020, as it is the intention of the city to move fire salaries closer to market. Furthermore, the new contract will be extended by 1 year to June 30, 2026, and all other items previously negotiated will remain as it is. Lastly, the city staff is recommending City Council approve resolution 2114, adopting the MOU, and resolution 2115, amending the classification plan and salary matrix for all fire positions. Thank you, and this concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Hernandez. Do we have any questions? Please.
Assistant City Manager Hernandez, in the report that we have, if we go back to the matrix, the last 2 pages, specifically the second to last page, is this title page specific to our professional firefighters, or is this a general to all salaries?
It's general to all salaries. This will be the cover page for all salaries of the city. I just included it into the salary matrix.
I understand, yeah, that's very helpful. Some of the language was confusing if it was just for the firefighters, so I appreciate that. So I do have a question in the, I guess it would be the second paragraph, talking about cost of living adjustments. I do see that it's calculated per the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the Consumer Price Index for urban consumers, looking back to April 2018. Was that meant to read April 2019 to March 2020? Or is that in fact April 2018? Because that would be kind of duplicative. That'd be a 2-year growth rate.
Which,
so Councilmember Garcia, that was supposed to adjust as years move forward. So what you're seeing at 2018 was for 2019, 2020 would be 2019. So it should be a 1-year reverse as we move forward for any COLA agreements. You're correct, and we'll make that change.
Okay, so, okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
I'm glad you all understand that. I think I followed it, but I'm glad you got that addressed. Councilmember Parkhurst?
So on the last page of this, there's a table that has the salary matrix. And there was discussion in this about eliminating the old step one and making a new step one and kind of to collapse things. So is the table we're looking at, is the step one there, the current step one or the new step one?
It's the new step one.
So we'll have 7 steps in this, and these are the representative ones.
Correct. So
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We will open this up to public comment. Any of you standing in the shadows there here for public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back for discussion.
Yeah, I'm just thrilled to see that we're getting an agreement with our firefighters. I know a lot of work has gone on in this process, and it's good to get an agreement. It's always a good thing. I like what I see. I do like that there's longevity bonus, which, you know, we don't have all the resources of big cities, but where we can, we're going to be able to try to retain our great talent and our wonderful firefighters. So I'm thrilled that we have an MOU put before us where we have an agreement. So
Any other comments? Councilmember Parkhurst?
Yeah, so I want to thank the city for the hard work on this and for the firefighters union for working on this. You know, I think it's a great example of what we can do when we can work together that looks after both the community and the employees. You know, this is a great example of that type of partnership. So kudos to everyone involved and for being proactive and having a thoughtful seat at the table.
I'll just add to that, it's great our fire department, professionalized career fire department is almost brand new. So this is a great kind of momentum to get going with that new organization, and I'm just really pleased. It's a win-win for everybody.
And I'm sure that's why all of you are still here, waiting for this very last item. But thank you so much for your service, and I look forward to passing this. So do I have a motion to approve unless Councilmember Creeds, you had a comment also?
No, I was just going to move to approve.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Here, many seconds. We'll allow Madam City Clerk to determine who seconded that one. But all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, that motion carries unanimously, and we're great to see that pass. And we are at the end of our agenda. I did hear an action item for new items from Councilmember Creeps for the Senior Commission, I believe, to present. Okay, great. Do we have any other action items for future agendas?
Do our firefighters here know how to treat hypothermia?
I don't want that to be for future meetings. I want that to be for this meeting.
Madam Mayor, I think, you know, it may make sense to have a presentation about pace in the future. I think that was an interesting opportunity. It may be worth a further discussion before putting it on, but I was intrigued by that for the seismic, and I think it's also something from a renewable energy perspective and an energy efficiency that I'm very keen to understand more about how we can take advantage of.
Yes, Madam Mayor. We no longer have a youth commissioner for the community services. She moved. We're grateful for her service to the community, but I would like to maybe have staff or we can talk about in a future agenda having youth commissioners abound within our commissions. I think all of them, maybe not, the planning commission might be a tough one, but as far as senior commission, either library board of trustees and where we had one previously, community service commission, discussion about having youth commissioners on all of those commissions, and even entertain the possibility now that we're down to 5 members that they be voting. I know then we'll have 6, so we could have a tie and that could be an issue, but I would like to propose that we consider this in the future again.
Okay, that'll be an interesting discussion. I was going to joke to see if the Cibrels would have another son to have on the commission. But, okay, and do we have any other items? Okay, seeing none, and then we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you everyone for your patience today, and it didn't get too cold, and thank you to all the staff and all our audio, video folks for hanging in there. Thank you.
You guys got rid of the radio station. That's fabulous.